It is Thursday night in East Lansing, Michigan. Come on in, gather around. Sorry, 11 minutes late, kicking off again today. It's the way it is. I apologize about that, but a lot of pregame going on, a lot of cramming, a lot of trying to get more and more information to try to throw out there to all the Michigan State fans. Great to have you back. Come on in, gather around, file in, be kind to one another if you wish. Great to have you with us. SpartanMag Live. We do this every week. I've been promising it for 2 years. We'll be doing it more than once a week, and it's going to happen, people. It's going to happen. Hoping to have some technological upgrades coming up soon also. But, hey, big month of December for Michigan State. My name is Jim Comparoni, publisher, SpartanMag.com. SpartanMag.com, website covering Michigan State sports dating back to the 1990s and the advent of the very internet, the World Wide Web. We were on there as soon as it was kicked off, pretty much. Been doing it ever since. Thanks to you all. Thanks to the subscribers. Thanks to the supporters of SpartanMag.com. And what we do, we've got some questions that have been posted over at the Underground Bunker message board. That's a forum for Michigan State fans who are subscribed to SpartanMag.com. In the meantime, give us a thumbs up here at the SpartanMag.com YouTube site. Also, subscribe to the SpartanMag.com YouTube site. That would help us a lot. Also, if you're so inclined, go check out SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. If you've been thinking about it for a long time, it's a great time to become a subscriber. Check it out. Month of December, a lot of things going on. Signing day, the first signing day is next Wednesday. We'll have coverage of that, of course. We're counting that down. Might have some talk about that tonight. Also, Michigan State, your very favorite Michigan State football Spartans. You may have heard of them. Number 10 in the country, I think they are. Might be number 11, depending on what poll you're listening to. I think they're number 10. I lose track of that sometimes. But we know where they're going. They're going to Atlanta, Georgia to play the Pittsburgh Panthers in the Peach Bowl. New Year's Day 6, another New Year's Day 6 opportunity for Michigan State football. Third time in, 8 or 9 years. Great for the program. Great year for Mel Tucker and the Michigan State Spartans. Also, basketball team, what are they, number 19 in the country? Defeated Minnesota last night as we record this. They'll be playing the Penn State Nittany Lions at Breslin Center on Saturday. Paul Kondike will have great coverage of that on Saturday. You can go to SpartanMag.com right now and read what I had to say about last night's victory over the Minnesota Golden Gophers, Michigan State. I wrote 4 or 5 takeaways plus the hoop feed. The hoop feed is where we kind of throw everything together and talk about analysis from the game, what happened. So if you didn't see the game, there are things in there for you. And if you did see the game, there's some analysis in there for you. That's what we try to do. With the hoop feed later on, we'll be taking some questions from Maggers. Maggers, that's whom we've affectionately referred to as subscribers of SpartanMag.com. They're Maggers. Some of you are future Maggers and you don't know it. Some of you are longtime Maggers. We certainly appreciate it. We invite the Maggers to post at the Underground Bunker message board, and we will answer those questions in mailbag style here once again this week on Spartan Mag Live. And those were posted over at the Underground Bunker message board, which I like to say is the church of what's happening now in Michigan State sports. It's the daily narrative. And it's where I see all of you on a day-to-day basis, and we're certainly are glad to have you, and we're glad to have you here. Big news tonight, Kenneth Walker, winner of the Doak Walker Award, deservedly so, given annually to the nation's top tailback, Kenneth Walker. 1,636 yards this year for Michigan State, 18 touchdowns, cornerstone player for a Cinderella season for the Michigan State Spartans. Aren't you all glad that he became a transfer portal? And out of the portal to Michigan State. Just got a text right there, just making sure everybody can hear, because sometimes not everybody can hear, and looks like everybody can hear based on. Let me see if I can find the comments over here. Looks like everybody can see. Everybody can hear, and we're off and running with Spartan Mag Live on a Thursday night. Kenneth Walker, great season. It was great to cover him. So many exciting moments. His ability, as you go back and look at it, of course he's great. Everybody can see that with all the yardage and production and everything. But his ability to make a cut off of one step without having to take multiple steps to make a cut, I think that's part of what sets him apart. And it takes great leg strength to do that. And he does it, and he changes speed, and he accelerates. You guys know it. Legendary performance. May not see another one quite like him. I'm not saying he's the best. He's one of the best. But he has his own style. Le'Veon Bell had his own style. Lorenzo White had his own style. I'm not old enough to have seen Eric the Flea Allen. Many of you were. But Kenneth Walker, outstanding season for Michigan State. And, people are going to ask, will he be playing in the bowl game? Will he be playing in the Peach Bowl? I don't know right now. Mel Tucker says he hasn't heard anything, so he's assuming everybody is going to play. I'm assuming those discussions are still taking place. Michigan State did not practice this week. The players did have individual workouts, optional workouts on their own. So if they had practice this week in pads, we may have gotten that answer sooner. But when the pads go on, I think they might next week, although next week is finals week. So between now and then, usually there's some practice. There's usually some practices the weekend before finals week. Once the coaches get off the recruiting trail and back on campus for a weekend, traditionally they have practices on Saturday, Sunday. Now that's the way it was in the old D'Antonio era. Last year, of course, there was no bowl game, so I'm not sure how they will do it, but I wouldn't be surprised if there are practices this weekend. So might have some information on Walker this weekend. We will keep our ear to the ground over at SpartanMag.com to try to bring you the latest. And over at the Underground Bunker message board, the Daily Narrative, when news pops up, that's a lot of times that's where it pops up first, and that's where we discuss the news of the day. So we'll find out about that. It's a big recruiting visit weekend for Michigan State. Many of Michigan State's commitments will be on campus for their official visit this weekend, and maybe some with unofficial visits who have already visited. Also, Michigan State continues to hit the portal hard, and Michigan State trying to close up recruiting-wise. The big news also today, you had a commitment for Michigan State, big one, out of the portal. Talking about Aaron Brule, Mississippi State linebacker, was formerly a 4-star recruit out of New Orleans. Went to Mississippi State, had a really nice beginning to his season, to his career there, and let's see, there he is. I had one ready, but we are primitive here. We're not afraid to admit it. But that guy right there, Brule, he's got some physicality to him. Had a really good 2020 season for Mississippi State. This year was a starter for most of the year. Lost some playing time. Safe to say, probably looking for new scenery, obviously. Visited Michigan State this weekend, or this week actually, had a great visit. And he's a New Orleans kid, and when he was here, it was snowing on Thursday. It was snowing, and it didn't seem to bother him. I'll tell you what it looked like. Let's see here. I had this one ready too, but anyway. Looked like this. Goodness gracious. Wow. Anyway, I didn't know the audio was going to be part of that. Anyway, that's what it looked like. It wasn't supposed to be that. The audio wasn't supposed to come through on that. Anyway, it was snowing like that during the visit, and a New Orleans kid, he was not deterred. Ended up committing to Michigan State today officially. Silent committed to Michigan State a couple of days ago. And Brule, inside linebacker, was a prolific pass rusher at Mississippi State. We'll probably talk about him a little bit more as we go. But let's go to the questions right now. Let me see what we've got questions-wise. We'll go question number 1. This is from the mailbag over at SpartanMag.com. And this comes from Spartan6674. He says, given what you've seen so far in the basketball season, what is your ranking in order of the top 5 Big Ten basketball teams? So my man Spartan6674 from Parts Unknown wants to get right to basketball. In the meantime, and I'll get to that in a second, but in the meantime, what do we have over here? In the meantime, what's that? That can only mean one thing. That can only mean one thing. Don Strait is back, and we appreciate his support and his help as always. Don Strait, thank you very much for your super chat. Personal sponsorship in the tip jar. Gathered around the SpartanMag.com bar tonight. Don Strait, appreciate it. And Don Strait didn't include a question with that, but if you do become a personal sponsor to Spartan Mag Live tonight, throw a question on there. It'll go straight to the top, and we certainly appreciate that. Thank you very much, Don, for your support. Spartan Mag live. Thank you. There's my Island House Hotel Mackinac Island mug. Not a sponsor. Maybe one of these days. I just like going there once in a while. Also, check out Mert's Meat. Mert's Meat in Okemos. Not a sponsor, but I like the place. Mert's Meats. It's over there by that car wash on Grand River. It's an awesome place. The reason I'm mentioning Mert's Meats is because they are a sponsor of local high school sports on LansingHerald.com. Also not a sponsor, but I appreciate what they're doing. I appreciate what LansingHerald.com is doing in terms of covering local high school sports. Neither one of them are sponsors. Totally organic. Just throwing my support behind them because they're doing a great job covering high school sports. A lot of people doing a great job covering high school sports. Lansing State Journal, great tradition over there for many years. Hey, Channel 2, Channel 10, Tim Stout, Audrey Dahlgren, the local people here in Lansing, they're all doing a great job. Make sure you watch your local sportscasts and support the sponsors that are supporting local sports coverage on Channel 6 and Channel 10. I'm not afraid to throw that out there for those people. As for Michigan State and their as far as college basketball, just getting underway. And I kind of like the way this is working out with Big Ten basketball season beginning in December. When they started doing this 3 or 4 years ago, I wasn't so sure. But now, last year they got into it, and it was a COVID year, so it was different, and they played, 20 straight games, and Big Ten teams were worn out by the time March Madness came around. We will wait and see what happens with Big Ten teams this year in the tournament. I suspect they will do better. But last year, top to bottom, 1 through 14, the conference was rugged, just very difficult and taxing on these players, in addition to all the other things that were going on last year. And the Big Ten teams, who I thought were very good, got into the tournament, and they were done. Across the board, they were all done because the season was so strenuous. I thought it showed itself mostly against, I think when Ohio State, whoever it was that they lost to, last year, let's talk about last year's basketball season. Ohio State especially was just caught in the mud. Illinois also. And Pac-12 teams that I kind of chided before the NCAA tournament started that they were just so non-physical, pillow fight basketball. And then the Pac-12 teams, those teams that I thought were completely non-physical, they had a great run in the NCAA tournament. And my theory is they had a great run in the NCAA tournament because their conference season was so light and easy in the Pac-12. That's my theory. I'm sticking to it. Let's see with the Pac-12. We'll see how they do this year. We'll see how the Big Ten does this year. But with the Big Ten starting their basketball season this week, Michigan State with a victory over Minnesota last night. And then they'll play Penn State. And then they'll have about 10 days off. Then they'll have a week off. They'll play Oakland University at Little Caesars Arena, and then another week off, and they'll play High Point at Breslin, try to get back into it. And then I think January 2nd, they're at Northwestern. So Michigan State will play 2 games in a 4-week period, have a week off or 10 days off. I can't remember specifically what the math is. But a lot of time off coming up for Michigan State in December. A time for Michigan State and Tom Izzo to have his boot camp, his 2-a-days, to really work on the team. He'll have an idea of where his team stands. They'll get to work, and they'll come out of December in excellent fashion. They're good right now. They'll come out of December even better, provided they stay healthy. That's something they didn't have last year. Last year around this time, Izzo went down with COVID for 2 weeks, so they were without him for 2 weeks. And then the team went down with COVID for 3 weeks in January. That's 5 weeks that team did not have Tom Izzo with them. If you don't know this already, Tom Izzo is pretty good at coaching basketball, pretty darn good. And every day, every minute that he's with the team builds toward the magic that he produces in March quite often. A lot of people are stunned by how well his teams come together in March. Why do they come together so well? Because Tom Izzo has that effect on the players day in, day out, and they build. Well, they couldn't build last year, for 5 weeks. Because they were without him, and he's kind of important, okay? So this year they've had a full offseason. They've had a full time with Tom Izzo, and this looks like a Tom Izzo team in a lot of ways. Those 2 freshmen, though, Akins and Max Christie, excellent defensive players. Christie, they've been putting him as a defensive stopper on perimeter players this year, which I thought that would be a weakness for Michigan State. It's been a strength so far. Christie's into it. He's into the film study. He's got good length, good quickness, and he's physically strong enough to do it, which I think surprised some people. So Michigan State, that's not a deficiency. It's become a strength. Will that remain a strength for him and Michigan State as the season goes along? I don't know, because sooner or later most freshmen do hit a freshman wall. So when you're asking him to play that many minutes as a stopper, the freshman wall could become a little bit more of a factor later on for Christie. But as of right now, Michigan State is excellent. Purdue, number one in the country. Had a little bit of problem tonight with Rutgers, but Purdue, number one in the country. Got no problem ranking them number one in the Big Ten right now. So who's number two? You could go with Ohio State, with their victory over Duke was pretty big. Looked pretty good doing that. I think Ohio State plays Wisconsin this weekend, which will be an interesting one. But Ohio State, a couple weeks ago, they lost to Xavier. They lost to Florida. They beat Duke. They've won 3 straight. They got Wisconsin this weekend. So the Ohio State that beat Duke on that night might be the second best team we've seen in the Big Ten all year, right? Maybe, I don't know. Day in and day out, I think I might take Michigan State right now, number 2 in the Big Ten. That could change. I don't know. I've not seen everybody every game, but Illinois looked had some problems earlier in the year. They lost to Marquette, didn't look good. They lost by 20 to Cincinnati. They've got Arizona this weekend, so we will learn a little bit more about Illinois. I watched that game, Illinois, when they lost to Marquette, and Carbello was just over dribbling. But they've got a lot of talent. They can rein that in and tighten the screws and become better. And they've won a couple. They beat Iowa. Iowa's pretty good. But they've already played Purdue and Illinois back to back. They lost 2 games, but Iowa's pretty good. They've got 2 losses. That's kind of strange to have 2 Big Ten opponents of that stature this early. In that regard, that's unfortunate for them, but I think Iowa is pretty darn good. Now, Michigan looked terrible against Arizona. Did not play well against Seton Hall. Someone else beat them. They've looked better lately, so would I put them in the top 5? I might go with Wisconsin for right now. Wisconsin's won 6 straight. They just won at Indiana. They lost to Providence back during the Gavitt games. I might put Wisconsin in there for now, but Michigan, maybe they'll get their stuff together. We'll have to wait and see. I wouldn't be surprised. But anyway, I'd go Purdue 1, Michigan State 2 for now. I'd go Ohio State 3, and let's go Illinois 4, and like Wisconsin 5 or something like that. So that's what's going on with that. Let me go over here to the comments area. I think Don Strait said he might have had a question over here. I can't see it. Anyway, let's go to the top with the comments over here. Rob South checking in first. Angelo Gross, Harold Joyner enthusiast. Thought he was first, but he was second. Samuel DeJesus says, go green. Harold Gross, I doubt we get Damari Alston. Talking about Damari Alston, he'll be visiting this weekend, running back out of Georgia, top 100. Really interesting running back prospect. News broke. Our guy, Jason Killip, does a really great job helping us cover Michigan State football recruiting. Noah Sprunger, also a great job. Paul Konadike, all the time, great job in many facets. Killip had the information that Alston was visiting this weekend, and that was quiet. But then it broke somewhere else down in Auburn. So we went ahead and started talking about it tonight on the Bunker. Damari Alston is top 200 running back. Big timer. Auburn wants him. He's committed to Auburn and was making what was going to be kind of a secret visit to Michigan State, but it's not a secret anymore. So Alston's going to be on campus, and as Michigan State tries to close up this recruiting class. As far as recruiting goes, Michigan State right now is ranked number 13 in the country, the recruiting class, number 13 in the country, which I didn't see coming. I was saying all summer that if and when Mel Tucker begins to win, he will start to recruit like a boss. The recruiting class right now is pretty good. They've got four guys that are 4-star recruits. Usually in order to have a top 15 class, you have to have about 7 or 8 4-star recruits. Michigan State has 4. I'm really not sure how the numbers are adding up that way, but Michigan State's number 13 for now. I don't know how it'll all shake out. Michigan State doesn't have a lot of scholarship room, but I'm expecting, I wouldn't be surprised if just the numbers, if teams leapfrog them, and Michigan State's class, which is a solid class, could end up ending, outside of the top 20. But I would have thought they were outside of the top 20 already by now, but nobody's leapfrogged them yet. Nobody's leapt over them yet. And Michigan State's not done yet. Armani Winfield, 4-star wide receiver from Texas. We've talked about him a few times. He's supposed to be deciding on signing day. I'm predicting no upset. I think he'll end up at Michigan State. He had formerly been committed to the Texas Longhorns. Michigan State kept a foot in the door there. Courtney Hawkins, Michigan State wide receiver coach, doing a great job recruiting him. And he had visited, took an official visit, I think, during the weekend of the Michigan game Michigan State stayed in there, and then lo and behold, Michigan State has a great football season. They go 10-2. Going to a New Year's Six Bowl, top 10 team in the country. That helps you recruit and finish with a guy who's a 4-star out of Texas, and I think Michigan State will get him. Keep an eye on Keontae Goodwin. Everybody is that's into recruiting. Goodwin, ranked the number 1 offensive line prospect in the Midwest. Number 1 in the Midwest. He's about 6'8". He's a huge human being from Indiana. He's committed to Kentucky. Been committed to Kentucky for several months. Michigan State undeterred, kept going after him, kept a foot in the door. And at times, Michigan State looked like they pulled ahead. Kentucky fought back. Alabama got in it. And it's a pretty good fight for the top offensive tackle in the Midwest. Tucker, Chris Kapilovic, they're scrapping in there pretty hard. You're in there with some recruiting heavyweights. Kentucky's done a really good job recruiting, especially border states, Ohio, now into Indiana. Everybody knows that Alabama is incredibly hard to beat in recruiting. I've not seen what else Alabama has going on with offensive line recruiting. And sometimes if they get a commitment elsewhere, or if anyone gets a commitment elsewhere at that position, that can have an impact on the tea leaves. I've not had my ear to the ground on that one, but Michigan State's still battling for Goodwin. Also, defensive end Zion Young. Defensive end, he was committed to West Virginia, visited Michigan State last weekend, and Michigan State's in really good shape for him. I think Michigan State will end up getting him. Defensive end, I'm still looking at his film and so forth. I don't have a really strong scouting report on him, but he's a 6'5", 230-pound defensive end from Atlanta, Georgia, Atlanta Westlake, and Michigan State happens to be playing a bowl game down near his neighborhood. So I think Winfield and Young going to end up being Spartans. We'll see about Goodwin. As for other visitors this weekend, a lot of the commitments. Keep an eye on Shannon Blair. Would not be surprised if Shannon Blair ends up visiting elsewhere this weekend. Might not be a big-time school that he visits, but keep an eye on that one. I have to wait and see. Shannon Blair had an ACL injury this year. Good kid. Michigan State got a commitment from him early. But we'll have to wait and see what happens with that one. Let's go back to the questions. We'll stick over here in the comments area. A guy named Who Hum says go green. Who him, or something like that. He's a new one. He's a new recruit. I've not seen him before in our gallery. Thanks for posting Who Him. So you've got Rob South running the point, Harold Gross, Harold Joyner, Angelo Gross, Harold Joyner enthusiast over the 2 guard. Samuel De Jesus over at the other wing. Who Him at the stretch 4. And you got Brian V down low in the middle saying, yo, it's good to see Brian, yo. Noah Sprunger in attendance. Noah Sprunger, our gifted and talented intern over at SpartanMag.com. Says make sure y'all hit the thumbs up. Thanks, Noah. Appreciate that. George Page, former keyboard player and I think guitar player for Surrender Dorothy. And one of the all-time great East Lansing bands of the 1990s. Surrender Dorothy trivia. What was the name of the band before they were called Surrender Dorothy? I think they were Casual Six. Casual Six, George. I don't mean to scare you, but I think I know that. I think George's nickname was Buff, if I'm not mistaken. Anyway, George Page says, hey, Comp, good times. What's your take on signing day top 10 class possible with transfers, Winfield, and Goodwin? Now, transfers don't count for the recruiting ranking. But if they were to get Winfield and Goodwin tonight, I think that they might get up there around top 10. Again, I don't know if they'll stay there because I don't know who's behind them. I don't know who's finishing fast. You usually have someone like Clemson or Florida or someone else finishing behind them to make them leapfrog. Like I say, the class is good. At first glance, just looking at the numbers, I wouldn't think that would be like a top 13, top 14 class. I could sit here and lie to you and try to sell subscriptions and tell you, hey, Michigan State's got the number 13 class in the country. They're recruiting better than ever under Mel Tucker. They're going to be sensational. You need to subscribe to SpartanMag.com. We've got all the coverage. I could do that, but I'm not going to do that because I don't really I can't do something that I don't really believe in that much. I do think they're recruiting well. I've been predicting that for a while, but I'm looking at Michigan State with 4 4-star recruits. Behind them, you've got Kentucky with 8 4-star recruits. As soon as Kentucky gets, so Kentucky's ranked number 14. As soon as Kentucky gets their 20th commitment, they'll jump Michigan State. Clemson has 13 commitments right now. They're not going to stop at 13. I don't know where they were, but where they will stop. But I wouldn't be surprised if they jump Michigan State. Missouri's at 15. When they get to 20, they'll probably jump Michigan State. South Carolina's at 19. When they get to 20, just the way the math works out, they'll jump Michigan State. I don't think Boston College will. Tennessee, not sure. Virginia Tech. That might be where Michigan State would settle, right behind Kentucky, Clemson, probably Missouri. Missouri's got a 5-star. That's what is helping their class. Also, Missouri's got 6 4-stars, and South Carolina with 5 4-stars. So I think Michigan State would probably settle in around 18 or 19. Below there, who could make a run? Oregon. So Oregon's got the coaching change. Oregon's at number 25 right now, and they've got 6 4-stars and 1 5-star. How many of those guys can they hold on to? Not sure. Oklahoma's losing recruits with their coaching change, but I suspect Venables, how can he save that class? Not so sure. Oklahoma State with 5 4-stars, they've got 15 recruits. When they get to 20, they could jump Michigan State. So that's the way this stuff works. That's how the sausage is made. I would project Michigan State to finish around 19 or 20, even with Goodwin and Winfield. And that's a pretty good class. J Huddle 79 says, when was the last time Walter Camp winner did not make it to New York? That's a great question, J Huddle 79. And that's a great observation and a great editorial comment, because the best editorial comments are comments that make you fill in the rest of the dots. So the rest of the dots are J.J. Huddle saying Kenneth Walker should be in New York, and I would agree that he should be. But the Heisman, they're going to take wherever they see a clear break in the voting numbers. That's where they broke it off. And I've been raising the decibel level about that topic a little bit on some of the local shows around town, and people are probably tired of me of hearing me talk about it. But maybe I'll talk about it some more. Walker, I'm not saying he deserves the Heisman. I'm just saying that it does not surprise me that there are so many stupid people that have Heisman votes. It doesn't surprise me that they were so dim and narrowly focused that they would be so gullible to just soup of the day, take their eye off everything that Kenneth Walker did all season because he had not a real prolific day against Ohio State. I've said that one of the problems, there's some really good national talk shows on the country. A lot of them I listen to, especially on Sirius Satellite. A lot of the national talk show hosts, who I have to believe and assume that a lot of the voters listen to, they're talking about Kenneth Walker. And I kept hearing after the Ohio State game that Ohio State shut down Kenneth Walker. Well, Kenneth Walker was up there for the Heisman, but he got shut down by Ohio State. Listen, he didn't get shut down by Ohio State. I think he averaged like 7 yards a carry in that game. He only had about 5 or 6 carries, popped off some nice ones. Newsflash, he had a bad ankle. Bad ankle. He did well just to suit up and get on the field. He might have been better off not playing at all. If he hadn't played at all, he might be in New York. Now, he wouldn't have won because he needed a big day that day. But he goes out there, plays through some pain. Scoreboard goes south, takes the running game out of the game, sits out the second half because the ankle's messed up. But all week on Sirius Satellite, I heard it from hosts that he was shut down, and none of those hosts talk about, hey, good for him, he tried to play through some ankle pain. If they would have known that, and not that he didn't get shut down. But that narrative, and I'm not saying they were doing it on purpose. I'm just saying that there's some very good talk show hosts, but they were speaking from an angle of ignorance, just them. And I do that all the time. I invented that. I'm not saying that makes them bad people. But because they didn't mention that he was hurt, you have all these other morons who have votes that hear that, and they strike him from their list. He doesn't get votes, doesn't get to New York. So it's too bad, because he had a great season. And he's a good kid, and I wish that he had that. He's a good young man. I wish for him that he would have had that experience to go to New York. Would have been good for the program, too. I'm not here to support the program or anything. I just cover the program. But ignorance bothers me once in a while. I have to deal with it all the time when I look in the mirror. So I'm familiar with it. It takes one to know one. Chris Woodruff says we sound great. Appreciate that. Gordon Tonona is here. We know him as Gordy now. Logan Augustine says, hey, Comp, what is your opinion on the 2 recent transfer commits, and which do you think will make the biggest impact? I think that Jacoby Winborn the kid from UNLV. I give him an edge over Brule for right now. I think Jacoby's a little bit more of an edge rusher guy. Although Brule was very busy as a pass rusher at Mississippi State. With Wilborn, let's see if I find my notes on Wilborn. I had an article about it over at SpartanMag.com yesterday, going over his film. And that you're talking about a guy in Wilborn that was second team all Mountain West, a guy that was a 2-star recruit coming out of Louisiana. So with Brule, it was a 4-star recruit. I think it was borderline top 100. Brule, both from Louisiana. Brule was a 4-star, goes to Mississippi State. Jacoby Windman, was a 2-star that ended up at UNLV. Did really well at UNLV. And, this year, 118 tackles, 11 tackles for loss, 6 sacks, second team all Mountain West. You've seen his video, his highlight video over at SpartanMag.com and other places. And with Jacoby Windman, just getting some notes and some texts from people. Sorry about that. He's really good. He's an athletic guy. And one of the things I notice is he matches athleticism of the running backs really well, whether he's taking on a running back in pass protection or tackling them in open field or chasing them down from behind. He matches athleticism of the running backs pretty well. I'm not saying he can run like a running back, but in a short area, it flashes quite a bit. Good quickness, really good athleticism. Good with using his hands, able to shock, control, get off blockers. Pretty good hitter. I'm not going to say he hits as hard as Quavaris Crouch. Crouch is a rugged hitter. I think he's a little quicker than Crouch. Crouch had good top-end speed. This guy's got good top-end speed, too. I think this guy, Windman, that pursuit speed, a lot of his highlights, you can just see there's some good IQ there in terms of being gap sound. I've got to watch some complete games to see if down in and down out that IQ shows up, and I suspect that it will. One of the things I wrote is whether you want to call it instinctive or having a knack, whatever word you want to use at the linebacker position, he's got that to sidestep and get off blocks. And his lateral movement, like if his gap is moving and he's going this way, his lateral sidestep movement is excellent. And there's some things that he does on his film for UNLV that, in my opinion, are things that Michigan State, he does things that Michigan State does not have at the linebacker position right now. Michigan State's got decent linebackers, but there's a few things I'm like, well, that's better than anyone Michigan State has at that little thing that he did right there. Talking about some of that athleticism and that elusiveness with the lateral movement. Michigan State's got pretty good, Halliday was pretty good, Crouch was pretty good. Harvey came in at the end of the season, did pretty well. I'm not saying this guy's going to be better than them. He's different, but I think he plugs in pretty nicely. And then, on third downs, he can go to the edge a little bit. But Bogle, the guy at Florida, is more of an edge player. This guy can play inside or outside. Also, something I wrote about, the awareness, the instincts, the knack, or whatever word you want to use. He has this ability to see through a blocker. He's like reading backfield flow, and he can see through the blocker and beat that blocker without focusing on the blocker. It seems like he's getting to the running back in his backfield flow, and he can evade the block and see through that guy to get to the ball and finish a tackle. I like Windman a lot. I think he's coming in as a second-team all-conference guy. Could have been first-team all-conference guy. He's got decent, good size at, 6'2"? No, what is he? Let me find him here. I don't know. He's like 6'2.5", 225, something like that. Close enough. He's got enough size. He's good. He's not huge. He's not small. It's good. Brule, the kid coming in from Mississippi State, had a really big sophomore season at Mississippi State. And then, would that have been his he had a really big 2020. Sometimes it's hard to tell who's a sophomore, who's a junior, and the rest of it because of the COVID thing that's in there. He's 6'1", 235, Brule. Really good in 2020. And, there's a lot of stats about his quarterback hurries and so forth. All right, long story short, had a really good 2020, and Mississippi State was looking at him as being the kind of the face of the defense. The face of the defense. They took him to SEC Media Days. As you usually are only taking, 2 or 3 players. Let me get this one down here a little bit more. Two or three players to preseason conference media days, and Mississippi State took Brule. Good interview, but more importantly, he was a real good player the year before. So you take players to conference media days that you expect to be breakthrough players. That's what they're expecting from Brule, and he was doing pretty well, but frankly had some trouble with some tackling issues, from what I understand. Lost his starting job, lost a little bit of his playing time. And looking for new scenery, apparently. Like I said, Mel Tucker recruited him previously when Mel Tucker was at Georgia. I saw some preseason videos that Mississippi State did on him, and it looked to me like he might have been carrying a couple pounds more than would have been ideal, possibly. I'm still watching film on him, so I'm not married to that opinion, but that was my thought. And I think that a guy that probably could use some new scenery, going to a guy that he knew on the recruiting trail, Mel Tucker. And I think Michigan State's strength and conditioning program and nutrition program are indeed great. That's not just hype. I think you saw it with Kenneth Walker. I think you saw it with Jaden Reed this year. So you bring this guy in, new scenery, put him in there, plug him in there with that nutrition program, and there's some upside. He's got some strength. He's got this ability to really shock and get off of blockers, which we saw in 2020 quite often. Now, as far as his stats go, and I'm responding to a question from Logan Augustine, who asked about the 2 transfers. As far as Brule goes, so this year in 2021, he had 54 tackles and 3 sacks in 11 games. The year before, he was more prolific. I think, what do you have? This year he had 1 sack and 3 quarterback hits, 23 quarterback hurries. There's stats floating around. As far as recruiting goes, he was a 4-star recruit out of Louisiana. Was ranked number 12 in Louisiana by Rivals.com. He took official visits to Mississippi State, Georgia, and Oklahoma State. So, as far as 2020 goes, started all 11 games in 2020. Now, these are the stats from Pro Football Focus. He led the nation in linebacker quarterback pressures with 39. That was more than anyone in the nation. Now, I caution you on that a little bit. He had 192 pass rush snaps, which was the most of any linebacker in the country, 27 quarterback hurries. Now, those numbers are eye-popping. All right, 39 pressures, the most of anyone in the country. That's for a linebacker, and he is a linebacker, but with Mississippi State, it's a 30 defense, 3 defensive linemen. So there's always a 4th player that joins the pass rush, even on a regular 4-man pressure. So they quite often were having him as a linebacker join the pass rush. So his numbers in that regard aren't really like, he's a linebacker, but that's not a traditional linebacker role in pass defense. A traditional linebacker role in pass defense is pass coverage and an occasional blitz, okay? But they were rushing him all the time, whether it be in blitzes or a regular 4-man rush. He was a regular pass rusher. So I would be more inclined to compare his quarterback pressure numbers to a defensive end rather than a linebacker. So anyone that's getting all excited about leading the nation in quarterback pressures from the linebacker position, that's a little bit skewed based on the scheme that they run. Doesn't make him a lesser player, but don't expect him to be Lawrence Taylor is what I'm saying. A lot of people are making him out to be Lawrence Taylor. That's not what's going on here. That was in 2020. He had, and this year his snap numbers were down by about 100 or so. He lost playing time. So this year, just if you want to compare apples to apples, Pro Football Focus, who I don't always agree with, but it's something to look at, they graded him on defense. They gave him a 62 grade for the year. 62. That's pass rush, tackling, everything. And ironically or not ironically, 62 is the exact grade that Pro Football Focus also gave to Cal Haladay. So a Cal Haladay type of player, production-wise, is what you're looking at. Now, Haladay only had 94 pass rush snaps this year. When Cal Haladay is rushing, it's a pressure or a blitz. He's either coming as part of a 4-man pressure with his own blitz, or as part of a 5-man and a blitz. Haladay had 2 sacks this year. Brule had 1. Brule, all right, so Haladay had 94 pass rush snaps. Brule had, I think, 128. So he's rushing the passer, and the year before he had 192. So Brule had 192 pass rushes in 2020. This year down to 128. Like I said, Haladay had 94. That gives you an idea. You guys watched Haladay every single week, and he had 94 pass rush attempts. That's how often the coaches schemed him to pass rush. So Brule had more attempts and had 1 sack on the year. Haladay had 2. In terms of pressures, Haladay had 9 total pressures, and Brule had 23. He's a good pass rusher. As far as tackling, he was graded as a 40 on Pro Football Focus. So there were some tackling issues there. So when he gets to Michigan State, tackling circuit's going to be a big deal for him. So if he's got a lot of talent. So now nutrition, strength conditioning, new scenery, Mel Tucker, tackling circuit might get a good player. I'm not going to sit here and slam pots and pans together and blow off sirens and streamers and talk about Michigan State getting a great player out of the portal. He might turn out to be that. Might turn out to be pretty good. Other people making him sound like he's great. I'm not going to sit here and lie to you and tell you he's great. We could sell more subscriptions if I did that, like I said earlier, but I'm just calling it like I see it right now. He adds to the talent pool at linebacker, and they're happy to have him. Winman, guy from UNLV, I think if they were to play this week, I suspect that Winman might be a little further along. And does Brule have a higher ceiling? I'm not ready to say that either. Winman's got a high ceiling also. Brule reminds me a little bit of Ma Nateote a little bit. Nateote is Michigan State's 4-star true freshman linebacker, was a backup linebacker this year, played mop-up duty, did some good things on special teams. Hit somebody, I think, in the Maryland game, caused a fumble in kickoff coverage. Reminds me of Nateote a little bit. All right, let's go back here to the mailbag. Feeds into this a little bit more. Question from R.D. Nemesi from Parts Unknown. When you guys post over the Underground Bunker message board, please tell me where you're posting from. It adds a little bit of fabric to the proceedings here. Anyway, he asks, what is Quavaris Crouch's status? He says, I see a reference to his departure. Speculation or traction? What will the linebacker room be next year? End of the question. I'm not sure. I've not heard anything about that. There's some speculation about that. He didn't play at the end of the year. Had a little bump and bang previous weeks. Not sure about why he sat out the last game. Coaches are pretty tight-lipped about whether things are injuries or not, so we have to speculate a little bit. That's kind of what we do. But is he going to be around next year? I'm not sure all that's been determined yet. Noah Harvey has another year coming back, a COVID year, if he chooses, and if Michigan State leaves scholarship room for him. I'm not sure that's been determined yet. These 2 transfers are going to be a part of it, Winman and Brule. Last year at this time, Noah Harvey and Chase Klein and Haladay, they were aware that linebackers were coming in, like Quavaris Crouch and Ben Van Summeren. They took their games up a notch. Chase Klein added some weight. I thought Chase Klein was playing pretty well when he decided to leave the team after 4 games and enter the transfer portal. It's going to be really interesting to find out where he lands. Good player, I think Klein is. I think Klein was disappointed that Crouch was getting a lot of that playing time, but coaches have to make those decisions. I don't know. We see them on the field. I thought Klein looked pretty good. I thought Crouch was all right. I thought Crouch was pretty good too. Crouch, some mistakes with scheme here and there, and they tried to work through that. He had some good moments. They could have used Klein later in the year, but Noah Harvey came in when Crouch was unavailable, and he played next to Halliday, and Harvey did a great job. Team guy, sticking with it, even though he was demoted. He's out of anybody. He's the one that lost more playing time than anybody due to the transfer portals on the way in. He kept slugging, had some big moments against Maryland, deservedly so. Big moments also in the Snow Bowl game against Penn State. So a great way for Noah Harvey to end up the season. And, Harvey, he could go into the portal with a year of eligibility and see what's out there for him. I just hope the best for him. And selfishly, I like covering the kid. I'd like to see Harvey come back to Michigan State. But that's college football these days. It's like free agency. Is so-and-so coming back or leaving? I'm not sure what that does to the fans. Do fans get tired of that? I don't know. Does it make it more interesting? I don't know. Best case scenario for Michigan State would be for Harvey, Halliday, and Crouch to all be back. Then you add Windman and Brule, and you have nice competition for 2 spots at the linebacker position. And they continue to go after Chris Bogle, who's a big-time edge talent, 6'5", out of the Florida Gators program. He's in the portal. A lot of you are familiar with him. If you've been over at SpartanMag.com talking about this guy, he visited last weekend. And he's edge rusher at about 6'5". And he was a national top 100 type of guy. Had a big announcement ceremony, big hat dance when he picked Florida over, I think, Miami and Alabama. This is Bogle right here. 6'5" edge rusher. Terrific specimen. There was a guy there's another NFL guy that plays for Florida, can't think of his name, at his position, and he took some playing time away from Bogle. And Bogle was thinking that player was going to move on to the NFL when he announced he was coming back. Then Bogle went into the portal to look elsewhere. That coincided, of course, with Florida coaching change. Michigan State jumped on him early. That's one thing about Michigan State. They're aggressive in the portal. Everybody knows that. But it's a multi-personal operation. They've got, Mel Tucker has an assistant coach who was watching the portal all day, all night. And as soon as someone is in the portal, they are on it, and they make evaluations, and they decide if it's someone they're going to move on. So Michigan State, that's how they got in on Kenneth Walker so quickly, and it certainly paid dividends. They get in on Bogle, and they're trying to close on that one. Let's see, I think Kentucky's in there, Alabama, and Florida's trying to keep him. Now, Bogle is the type of guy that they don't really have on the roster right now. Tank Brown, they got out of the transfer portal last year from the University of Minnesota, is theoretically that type of player. And Tank Brown had some injuries at midseason, came back, was on special teams here and there, played some pass rush situations here and there, didn't quite make a big impact, but was on the field in the mix. And he was a former 4-star recruit out of St. Louis. Younger guy. Bogle's a little more established, but Michigan State needs some pass rush help, right? Now, is he a guy that can play defensive end, down in and down out, and take on the point of attack in the run game? I've not watched enough to have an answer on that one. But pass rushers make a difference. Everybody knows that in every level. Well, not every level, because whether you have a pass rusher in Pop Warner doesn't always matter a whole lot, because you don't have a lot of passing game for 9 and 10 and 11-year-olds, right? Anyway, Bogle, Michigan State's going after him still, and that'd be an interesting one to add to the talent pool. As far as other questions, let's see if we go back to the mailbag here. I've lost my place. All right, this comes from Sola Beer Guy from Westland, Michigan. And he says, do you think the secondary will perform better when Barnett is the sole secondary coach? Do you think it was an issue of coaching philosophy, instruction, difference between Tillman and Barnett that led to the safeties and corners not being on the same page with one another? End of the question. The reason I say end of the question is because sometimes, most viewers don't have the question in front of them, so I want to let you know what I mean. Anyway, end of the question. All right, so Travaris Tillman moving on from Michigan State to Georgia Tech. He was the cornerbacks coach. Last year, Barnett was safeties coach. Year before that, Barnett was corners coach, and Mike Tressel was safeties coach. Barnett and Tressel have worked together. That worked out pretty well. No surprise there. Tressel moved on to Cincinnati. Barnett moves to safeties. They hire Tillman, corners, and Michigan State had a miserable year in pass defense. It wasn't all on Tillman, but miserable year in terms of total yardage. And I've talked about this before. In terms of yards allowed per pass attempt, which is the main. Not sure if you could hear that or not. I'm not sure if that worked as a cough button or not. But anyway, I've been talking about it. Yards per pass attempt is the most important pass defense statistic, and Michigan State was I think, 9th in the Big Ten. Not dead last. 9th in the Big Ten in that statistic. Not great, but not as bad as dead last in the country like you always hear about total yards allowed. Michigan State was I think there were 61 teams they were in the 90s in the country in yards per pass attempt, which is not good, but it's better than dead last. Anyway, Michigan State's pass defense I thought was decent for about 2/3 of the season going into the Michigan game. They went with a little bit more man-to-man, try to mix it up a little bit more, and they tripped over themselves a little bit. Didn't turn out so well. Changed a few things against Purdue, and then had some assignment problems there that's where the lack of same-pageness really started to hit, was the Purdue game, a little bit against Ohio State, and then they were just beaten against Ohio State athletically. And I think they were a little bit stunned against Ohio State, which had an impact on same-pageness, a word I invented that doesn't exist, against Ohio State. And then problems again against Penn State. First touchdown, 14-0, touchdown down the right sideline. Kimbrough's out there. Kimbrough's playing cover 2, and the safety's playing cover 4. Did they miss a signal? I don't know. They yanked him out of there a little bit later. Then we talked about it last week, about the second touchdown when Darius Snow wound up on Dotson, tried to jam him pretty much one-on-one, but let him go, and the safety was over playing the field to the single receiver side. We had trips over here, formation of the boundary, with the most important receiver, number 5, in the middle, and the safety's over there. That can't be the way that they designed it. But that's the way. So the signals came in, and it looked to me like of the 11 guys on defense, 2 or 3 of them thought it was one coverage, and 2 or 3 thought something else. Because I really don't think that they wanted to have Snow cover number 5, and they jammed him and then turned him loose to nobody. So that's about when Mel Tucker took over the grease board and really went after them on the sidelines. You saw that. Anyway, were there too many coaches, too many cooks in the kitchen in the defensive backfield? I'm not sure. But as you alluded to, from what I understand from my sources, they won't have a 2-coach system in the defensive backfield. It's going to be all Harlan Barnett and Tucker. We will be 2 because Tucker's going to be helping more. Kind of what they did when they used to have Barnett and Mark D'Antonio coaching the defensive backfield. So now it's going to be Barnett and Tucker. And I think that sounds like a great idea. So Barnett's outstanding. Give him all 4 of them. The chances of same-pageness will increase dramatically. And also, I think corner technique will improve. So you can make of that what you will. I think it'll improve in that area. Can't get any worse in terms of total yardage, but there were times this year when pass defense was solid. I always talk about that Miami game. People were wondering about Michigan State giving up those yards. Well, they're playing soft. They're playing soft because Rambo and some of those guys didn't want to let those guys get behind. Play over the top, make them complete, hit people, limit yards after catch. They held Miami to 19 points. Gave up some yards, but looked good on the scoreboard. I'm not saying that's the way you want to play every single week, but at that point in the season with this level of development in the program, I thought it was smart. Because Michigan State had some new corners at the time. Kimbrough was trying to get on the field. I think he had some injuries, minor injuries in training camp. Ronald Williams was still new to being an every down college football player at that position. So they were gingerly, heading into a new frontier with some of those guys. So it made sense to me that they wanted to stay a little bit more conservative in pass defense that day, made sure they hit hard. It was more of a Norm Parker approach to pass defense, and I thought it was great for that particular weekend. They got a W, and it was a big win, and that set the momentum for the season. And as they went, I mean, that's not the way they want to play. That was bend but don't break. Mel Tucker doesn't like the phrase bend but don't break. He doesn't want to have a bend but don't break defense. That's not his philosophy. But what he does say is from week in to week out, there's different ways you have to approach each opponent, which makes perfect sense to me. It's very Bill Belichick of him, right? So as they learn more about their personnel and on defense, they pushed the envelope a little bit more, tried to do that against Michigan, and then didn't work out as well. And then it kind of, the wheels came off after that. And they were making mistakes at the end of the season that they were not making earlier in the season. I think they were trying to add more volume, and some of it got lost in translation. So anyway, I think I think those are great moves. I talked about it last week that we're still learning about Mel Tucker to see what they would do in terms of, hanging on to coaches. We knew what the previous staff would do. Got a lot of respect for them and the way they did it, but I said we would learn as we go. Well, we've gone 9 more days since our last podcast, and we learned something. And there's a vacancy at the coaching staff, and I think it's a healthy thing. What do we have here? That's where my brulee photo was. Yeah, let's go to this one. Go back to fall. All right, so what else do we have? Spefton from East Lansing. He says, this question might have been asked before, but I missed your analysis. Was our pass defense deficiency due to scheme, poor coaching, or deficient talent? Related follow-up, is the departure of Tillman subtraction or addition by subtraction? I think I just answered those questions. And you can go back and look and watch last week's SpartanMag Live. Ron Armstrong and I got into it pretty deeply about Michigan State's pass defense. Go back and watch that when we get into it pretty deeply. DC Green from Northville, Michigan says, talk about Michigan State recruiting specifically. What does Mel Tucker mean when he says he has built the program to recruit nationally? Does he mean organized by geography, organized by leagues, coaches assigned to specific geography and leagues, regular contact with certain coaches, college and high school coaches, conference calls, question mark, question mark, question mark. Can you offer some insight, Jim, question mark? That's from DC Green in Northville. No, that's the way a lot of coaches do it that way. Michigan State's done it that way in the past in terms of geography, and a lot of you guys know that. I'll go ahead and repeat the way it used to be and the way a lot of programs still do it. One coach might have a certain part of Michigan and a certain part of the country. Mike Tressel had West Michigan from Muskegon up to Traverse City, and then he had like Northeast Ohio. I don't know if he had a part of Ohio, and he had something else too. So that was Mike Tressel when he was at Michigan State. Harlan Barnett had a part of Detroit, or all of Detroit, and then he had Cincinnati, Southern Ohio, where he was from, and parts of Florida. That's the way it used to be, right? I could go on with other examples. But the way Tucker does it is he has the assistant coaches recruit their position. They are responsible for their room, which I think makes more sense. It might be more expensive to do it that way in terms of recruiting travel. Maybe. I'm not sure. But I think it just makes more sense to tell Will Piegler, you're recruiting your own running backs, go get them, rather than Piegler having like an area of Georgia recruiting corners and linebackers and maybe a running back, and then he's hoping that Mark Staten can recruit a running back for him out of New Jersey. No, let Piegler recruit his running backs wherever they are around the country, which, like I said, could be more expensive. But Ron Burton recruiting all his defensive linemen now, and so forth. Chris Kapilovic, really good aggressive recruiter. He's recruiting his offensive line room, and I think he's a good recruiter, and I'll be eager to see what that offensive line room is going to look like here in the next 2 or 3 years. So that's how they divide it up. Now, in terms of what he means by recruiting nationally, that's just a mindset and a philosophy. Mel Tucker believes they're built to recruit nationally because partly because they're the facilities that are going to be going up. The improvements to the football area, the football building are going to be amazing, and that's going to help them recruit nationally. I think Mel Tucker thinks of himself as somebody who can go into any neighborhood, in any living room, in any high school coach or high school player, and have an impact on them. Michigan State, you wear Michigan State, it means something, but you go to California and further away, it might mean not quite as much, but Mel Tucker believes if he's wearing it, he can get it rolling. So some of it is willing it into existence. He says we are built to recruit nationally. He says that Michigan State is an all-weather team. That's how they try to train. He says Michigan State is built to win in the fourth quarter. So a lot of it is philosophy and a mentality, and it's an aggressive, ambitious mentality. And Michigan State has not recruited that way in the '85 scholarship era. I think Doherty did a little bit that way, going nationally in some regards, back in the '60s, back when no one was paying attention to recruiting. But that's what he means. It's a philosophy, and it's an ambitious philosophy, and he's hoping to put together a roster that can compete with some of these rosters that you see in the top 5 in the country. And it'll be interesting to see how Michigan competes with Georgia. I think Michigan's playing some pretty decent football right now, obviously, and Georgia's been great, but now Georgia's trying to hold on. And Georgia hasn't played a lot of physical, run-oriented teams in their conference. So Michigan offers a different knuckleball to them. So I know everybody listening here is a Michigan State fan, and you're hoping Michigan loses. But if Michigan wins and plays well, I think that I'm not saying that's great for the Big Ten, but it's a barometric reading that style of football can compete with the so-called best. I'm not saying you should root for that at all. I'm just saying it's going to be interesting to see how that all pans out. All right, we have King Ghidorah from Southeast Michigan. He says, got to go with the Tillman replacement question. Early names being heard, any possibilities of Morrow, Belk, or Martin, etc. They are not, there's not really going to be a replacement for Tillman. Tillman was corners coach, and Michigan State's not going to hire a corners coach, in my understanding. I'm hearing Michigan State's going to go after more of a second defensive line coach, like a pass rush defensive ends type of coach. Morrow, really good recruiter, tight ends coach for Kentucky. Belk is the coordinator for Houston. I don't see Michigan State making a change at coordinator. So, it's probably, we had never heard of Tillman when he was hired. I suspect it's going to be someone like that. They're going to bring in somebody that we're not aware of, that Tucker's going to go over some really good candidates, and he's going to have a reason to bring someone in, and we'll find out who that is when the time comes, but I'm not hearing of anybody right now. Question number, whatever the next number is, from MSU for Life, from Parts Unknown. He says, who's the next transfer that Mel Tucker will land? Chances are Bogle, kid from Florida who's with the Gators. Alabama's looking at him. He visited here. I heard he really liked it, but he didn't commit on his way out. I heard it was close, but I'm not predicting he'll be a Michigan State commitment, but you're asking me who's the next transfer? That's the one that we know of that's visited, so he'd be the most likely. And MSU for Life says, I think he'd be excellent add with his elite length and speed, unquote. All right. Spartans Forever says, this is Spartan Forever from Grand Rapids, Michigan. He says, what do you think the wide receiver room looks like next year? Is Jaden Reed going pro? Is Naylor back? Do we get Winfield? And can he make a splash as a freshman or any other freshman wideout do you think will make contributions? Thanks. That's from Spartans Forever. Wide receiver room next year. Jaden Reed, I've got a feeling he's going to go. Heard a couple of things, saw a couple of things. He's not announced it. Just a hunch right now. That's my vibe read on that one. No pun intended. Jalen Naylor, I think, is coming back. I thought that about Cody White, too, and he left, but I think Naylor's coming back. So I think it's going to be Naylor, Montori Foster, Trey Mosley. I think that's a pretty good trio. Winfield's going to be pretty good. I think Michigan State's going to get Winfield, the four-star out of Texas. Keon Coleman started making more of a splash late in the season. I think Coleman is an every down, all-day sucker. Next year, all day, every day. So I think those are your 4. And in the Tucker era with Jay Johnson, you've seen Michigan State use 3 receivers, sometimes 4. They don't go past 4 in that playing group very often. There were some times this year when Christian Fitzpatrick got on the field here and there. Not a lot, though. Foster had a little bit of time, so then when Naylor got hurt, Foster started playing more and did a pretty good job. Foster's got a high ceiling of potential to still climb toward, but Naylor was a cut above, a little older, a little more mature, and I thought that the strength conditioning program really agreed with Naylor, too. I think we saw a better version of Naylor this year than in the past, and he'd been pretty good in the past. So I think Naylor's good. I think that's what it looks like right now. I think Reed's going to go. If Reed comes back, that'd be awesome if you're Michigan State, right? But I think it's going to be Naylor, Winfield, and Mosley. Pretty good trio with Coleman right in there also. All right, Jay Rush. He says, have you done any film study on where our pass defense broke down this year? The games where the opponent seemed to pass at will, short and deep, to very open receivers, Ohio State, Purdue, etc. How much did linebacker play in space contribute to the problems? Unquote. That's from Jay Rush from Parts Unknown. Again, we talked about this a lot last week. Talked about it a little bit earlier. Linebackers is an interesting part of that. Interesting question. Because there were some times when it seemed like the linebackers, the spacing didn't make a lot of sense. So I can't talk about specifics right now, but I think it all, Tucker would say it all goes together, including the pass rush. But I was still trying to get a handle on the linebacker situation in terms of pass defense as we went along. I'm not sure Crouch made a great transition in that regard to that area of the game, including a couple times in the red zone. Sometimes he'd come off the field in the red zone if you noticed, which was interesting. So Halliday, of course, had that pick 6 against, who was it, Indiana. One play, but it's a nice play. All right. Spartan Pro from Lowell, Michigan says, Jim, will you promise me that Michigan State will beat Pittsburgh and the following day we will get to enjoy Michigan getting thoroughly destroyed by Georgia, unquote. That's from Spartan Pro from Lowell. Will I promise you that? I cannot promise you that, Spartan Pro. I cannot promise you that. Thanks for your contribution, though. Jay Huddy says he's from Sunrise in Flint, Sunset in Detroit City. So that's where he's posting from. He says, how do you think the new linebackers impact this team given their skill set? And what's the scoop on Crouch? Unquote. Well, Crouch talked about, I'm not really sure if he'll be back for the bowl game. I assume he will be. Like Tucker says, if we haven't heard anything, that's what I'm assuming, but not sure. I assume he will be. I've got no reason. I assume he will be. The new linebackers, I already talked about that a moment ago. I think Brule has some work to do. I think that he can do well to improve his body at Michigan State. And new scenery might agree well with him. Windman, I think, is a plug-and-play help right now. Quickness. Windman reminds me a little bit more of a bigger Antoine Simmons a little bit. Real nice linebacker in the transfer portal. And that's what, and I think that's what you want in the transfer portal. And there's different ways to look at transfer portal. And it'll be interesting to view this and measure this as we go along. What is more effective over the long haul? To go to a 4-star recruit from a power program who wasn't getting on the field, like a Harold Joyner? Or is it better to get that unrecruited 2-star guy who goes to UNLV and becomes all-conference? Do you get the all-conference mid-major guy or the second-string 4-star power program guy? I don't know the answer to that. I kind of like mid-major all-conference guys. Michigan, a couple years ago, got that defensive end from Central Michigan who was like all-MAC pass rusher. Michigan State looked at him also, and I forget his name. Went to Michigan and was, he didn't start, but he was a passing down type of guy, and he was okay. I can't remember if I think he might have been a late round draft choice. But I tend to believe that that's the route that could end up being the better route, is a proven all-conference mid-major type of guy. Could be wrong. We'll have to wait and see. Brule is a guy that did get on the field, was headed in the right direction, took a step back for whatever reason, looking for new scenery, former four-star New Orleans guy. He was playing for Mike Leach, and Mike Leach is a good coach, interesting fellow, but Mike Leach can get a little persnickety. Persnickety, that's the word of the day. He can be a little bit difficult sometimes. Remember when he locked Craig James' son in the dark room, got fired at Texas Tech. Different type of guy when he turns on you. So I don't begrudge anyone who wants to get new scenery away from him, although he's a pretty good coach. And I was rooting for Mississippi State against Mississippi in the Egg Bowl for no reason. I just found myself rooting for them. But good talent, Brule, new scenery, new strength and conditioning and nutrition regimen. We'll have to wait and see what he becomes. It's going to be fun. And I'm expecting both players to be here in January and be a part of spring football. Hopefully green-white game will be open to the public. I'm sure it will be. Get a chance to see them then. And then we'll do one of these and talk about what we saw after we go through the film. Michigan State, I think, will be having practice next week. And I guess I'll throw this out there. A little bit of scoop. I'm not naming any names, but there's a chance that there'll be a member of this recruiting class who could have a chance to practice right away. Did I just say that? Possibly. It's not a done deal yet. Wouldn't be able to play right away, but might be able to practice right away. Yeah, someone they're signing right now. They're looking into it. Steve from Stevensville, Michigan. He says, over and under on how many additional players will transfer to Michigan State. Will we be bringing in 32 new faces, 25 recruits plus 7? 25 recruits, I don't know. What are they at right now? 21, and that might drop a little bit, and then it might add a little bit. 25 plus 7. Yeah, I'm hearing 32, 25 plus 7. They might be on the road to that. So you're saying how many additional players will transfer in? I'm still expecting an offensive lineman. I wouldn't be shocked if they bring in a safety. I wouldn't be shocked if they go after another defensive end, pass rusher, in addition to Bogle. So I don't know what that adds up to. Hinkie from South Lyon says, how do you see the backup quarterback situation sorting out? Will Hampton Fay transfer if Noah Kim makes a push in the spring, unquote? That's from Hinkie from South Lyon. Great question. And you know how how the portal is these days. A lot of guys going to the portal kind of quickly. Also, I've got some other information. We'll save that one. Faye. So, I think whoever, I think there's a good chance that whoever, if Kim stays ahead of Hampton Fay, I could see Fay seeing the writing on the wall that Thorne is going to be starting for 2 more years, and if Kim's ahead of him and Hauser's on the way in, nothing against Michigan State, nothing against Fay, but that's the way college football works these days. If you don't get a chance, you throw the dice back in the Yahtzee cup and you roll them again. Would not surprise me. It would be, I don't know. So it's going to be a good competition going into the spring for that backup role. And I thought Kim looked really good in the spring game last year. Now Hampton Fay had just enrolled, so he was new. Kim was new too, but Kim had been around a little bit longer. And when I watched pregame this year, I didn't, I'll have to watch more closely in the bowl game. But I think Kim was repping number 3 usually. But that's going to be a great competition right there. And they both have good talent. Faye's a bigger, stronger guy. But Kim, a little more slight of build, but Kim's got some ability. I don't know if Kim's going to end up being the guy here. They probably like to keep him. I know Tucker and those guys have been pleasantly surprised with him. Peyton Thorne's the man, though, right? But if Kim does leave, it would not shock me to see Kim go to some place and do well, like Rocky Lombardi did. Frankly, Rocky Lombardi did better than I expected at Northern Illinois. And just because Rocky Lombardi he kind of always had, some mechanical and accuracy issues, but it looks like he improved those things. I mean, he was always a really good competitor and a physical athlete and a good leader, a good kid. Everybody knows that. Good young man. But I think he cleaned up some of his passing skills to make that happen at Northern Illinois this year. So good for him. I think that as a passer, I would think Kim is like a little bit ahead of where. I'm not going to say where Lombardi was, because Lombardi had a couple 300-yard games. I mean, you can't just do that rolling out of bed. But it wouldn't surprise me if Kim goes to a MAC school and does well, or he goes back near his home and goes to someplace like, William and Mary or Old Dominion or something like that, because he's from Virginia, and goes there, Coastal Carolina, and does well somewhere else. It would not surprise me. I'm not counting him out. I think he's a good prospect, but there's only one football and there's only one quarterback. So it's kind of hard. So those guys go elsewhere, as you guys know. Nothing against anybody, just the way it is. All right, let's go over here back to the comments area. What do we have here? Where did I leave off? Did Purdue lose to Rutgers? Is that what Brian Bemis is saying? I thought they came back and won that game. Was I watching that incorrectly? I was wrong. Yeah, Rutgers won. I walked by and looked at the score and checked in with my my person that watches things. Oh, it was a partial score that I saw. So 70-68. All right. I still have Purdue number 1 in the Big Ten, though. Thanks, Brian. That was a while ago. My bad. Brad Fishenko says Rutgers just got upset by Purdue in a last-second shot. I do not have a monitor here in the studio. Taylor says, does Tuck believe in the blue chip ratio philosophy? Sorry about that. What do we have here? You guys like Beaumont Tower? How's that? Taylor says, does Tuck believe in the blue chip ratio philosophy? Bud Elliott has compellingly argued that the more 4- and 5-star players than 3-stars needed to win a national title. Mel Tucker has said multiple times that's his goal for Michigan State. I don't know if Tucker believes that, but I think indirectly he probably does. I think he's been part of staffs at Alabama and Georgia where there's a level of talent, and I think that's the level of talent that he wants to trot out of the tunnel, out of the bus, onto the field, and with relentless precision defeat people. Yes, I think he wants them to look like the Georgia and Alabama guys. In order to get guys that look like that and are built like that and can run like that and hit and shed and do all those things, in order to get guys like that, you're probably going to need to recruit and sign a lot of 4- and 5-stars. How many 5-stars? You got to remember there's only about 25 5-stars in the whole country. 27, 28 5-stars in the whole country. That's why they're 5-stars. And out of those 27 players, there might be 2 that are within 5 hours of here. So to get a 5-star, you got to go to Florida, Georgia, Texas, California. And Michigan State going to those places to get guys like that, even with Mel Tucker and his recruiting potential, I'll have to believe that when I see it. That's going to be hard. But that's his intention. Side note, every year in the Super Bowl, you'll have those idiots say, wow, there's in the starting lineup in the Super Bowl, there were 5 2-star guys and only 4 5-star players. There's more 2-stars than 5-stars. And there's more 3-stars than 5-stars. McFly, there's 27 5-stars in the country. And there's 2,000 2-stars. There's a pool of 2,000 and a pool of 25. Should anybody be surprised that in the Super Bowl that there's 5 of these and 5 of these? Like that proves some point. All right. But yeah, I don't know if, and you know, the things that Bud Elliott puts together, I'm not surprised by that. I do think that you can win a Big Ten championship and get to the college football playoff with 3 stars and some occasional 4 stars like Michigan State proved and like, Washington did. But can you get there and beat those teams? I'd have to see it to believe it. It's not been done yet. Usually in order to compete with those teams, The teams that have won national championships, Ohio State, Alabama, Clemson. Georgia's there this year, possibly. Florida State going back to the Jameis Winston year. LSU. Yeah, you need that number of the 4 stars. So I don't know if he's setting out to I don't think he's looking at a book and saying, hey, man, we need more 4 stars. I think he's looking at film and saying, hey, man, I need that guy. And he just happens to be a 4-star. So it's a self-fulfilling prophecy, and I suspect he does not disagree with it. All right. Roy Schroeder from Holly says, if you haven't discussed it, the Walker snub. Was he caught in the middle of a corporate media decision? He sure as heck wasn't outplayed. I'm not going to go along with the media thing. I don't think that there was any agenda. But I tell you what we're going to do. We're going to open the phone lines. What is it? 616-439-1158. Oh, you like them apples. Let's open it up. Let me make sure everything's on. But since Roy from Holly, Michigan, I happen to know a little bit about Holly, Michigan. I happen to know a little bit about the Red Devil Pizza Parlor. Happen to know a little bit about Battle Alley. Happen to know a little bit about the Holly Hotel. Happen to know a little bit about Quick Save and the Donut Shop. Happen to know a little bit about McKay's Hardware. Anyway, the Walker snub. I think I got into that earlier. I think I had a little bit of a rant earlier. So I think that probably sufficiently answered your question about that. I think that it's not like anyone made a decision. That's just where the votes chopped off, and I explained what I thought that was all about. Media. I mean, I don't think anyone was pushing. I think the people talking about it. Hutchinson and I think Hutchinson should be there. He's a very good player for a very good team and had an impact, especially late in the season. The people talking about ESPN and the talking heads, because there's Tennessee fans that still think that ESPN cost Peyton Manning the Heisman. Actually, Peyton Manning just had a rough game late in the year against Vanderbilt. You don't want to have a rough game late in the year when all the Heisman trophies voters are rolling off the couch and reading stats. But when they push a player, I think it does have an impact. They were pushing Hutchinson.
Call from
Taylor from LA.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail.
All right, let's go out to beautiful Los Angeles, California with Taylor. How you doing? Welcome to SpartanMag Live.
Hey, how's it going, Comp? I'm good. How are you?
Really good. Thanks for calling in.
Excellent. Thanks for taking my call, Comp. I have a basketball question.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Have you, all right, now obviously there's been a lot about the turnovers and everybody can see that. Would you agree that this is not a very good passing team? Is that what you're saying? Like it's more kind of us, or do you think we've just played like tremendous defensive opponents?
I think that, Conan and I talked about this last week. Michigan State's had some really good teams that have had turnover issues, especially in the first half of the season. I think Michigan State wants to play fast. That's part of the Izzo way. That's part of blitz, the blitz counter break after makes and misses. So, Izzo's on them to play fast, play fast, play fast. The 2-guard sprints the left sideline. The 3-guard sprints the right sideline. And the center sprints toward the rim. And the 4 is a trailer. After a basket, the 4 always inbounds it. So you have to run the court, you have to run the floor. And they judge that and they grade that. They evaluate that. So those guys are told to go to breakneck speed. Fast, 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 fast. Sometimes when you're doing that fast, it's my observation and my belief, when they're thinking that they got to go that fast, sometimes that's when you might get the shot fake and jab, and you move your pivot foot, and you're called for traveling. Or you might be sprinting the lane and you catch it and you're stepping out of bounds because you're trying to play so fast. So part of that is the scheme, and you got to rein that back in. It's just the system. And Izzo says he wants the guys to play maybe just a tick slower, but that might not be the right word. I don't think it's a bad passing team. I think it's a much better passing team than last year. Last night against Minnesota, Izzo wanted more post-entry passes, and they didn't quite get that lined up real well. When Minnesota went in zone, I thought it was really interesting that Michigan State got into their zone offense and operated, and it was just a couple of possessions, not many, but they got into their zone offense, and it's the first time we've seen it that extensively, even though it was just a couple of possessions. They flashed Malik Hall to the high post at the free throw line, got it right to him, and he went to work. One time, dribbled in, got it down to Bingham for a dunk. Next time, they stayed home on Bingham. He got to the free throw line, one dribble, hit a little 10-footer, and they got out of the zone. That's a good passing team. Getting into an offense, feed the foul line, and sending that particular part of the offense through Malik Hall, I thought that was pretty good. I think that Tyson Walker is going to prove to be a good point guard. I think he's slick. He had 4 turnovers last night, but he dribbled one off his foot in the last 3 or 4 minutes. But I think he's a good passer, and that's going to keep showing itself. Christie and Brown, we'll have to wait and see on those guys. It wasn't too cute early in the game when Walker threw one and it hit Hauser in the head when he was cutting to the rim. That wasn't a good look. But you're asking if they're a bad passing team? I don't think so. I think the turnovers it's a wide garden variety of different types of turnovers. Last night they had 3 in the first half to the last 2 minutes. Then they had some turnovers later in the game. The worst one I thought of the whole night was when Hogard was doing that ball reversal with about 4 minutes to go. Steele taken back for a dunk, and I think that cut it to like 9 points with 4 minutes to go, and the game wasn't over yet. That was a bad one. That was too casual. And in film study, I can guarantee they might break a couple of projectors over that one. That's correctable. I don't think that's going to be an every game, every week type of problem. So to answer your question, I don't think Michigan State's a bad passing team.
Okay, it's entirely possible that I'm conflating the lack of a great passer.
Yeah.
We don't have a Winston. We don't have a Denzel Valentine. There's no great passer on this team, and maybe that's just standing out to me, and I'm trying to put all the turnovers on that. So that's why I like to talk to people like you who actually, are experts.
I'm not an expert. I'm just a reporter. So you can watch basketball just as much as I can, and I respect your opinion. But I think that you're going to start seeing Tyson Walker become a better and better passer. I was at practice today. They had a walk through, and I spoke with Tyson Walker a little bit. And he took some shots early in that game that he admitted he might not have taken in the past. And he's shooting really well from three-point range. I think he's 75% from three-point range. I think he's 9 out of 12, which is amazing, right? He's a good shooter, was a good shooter last year. He's not going to remain a 75% three-point shooter, of course. But he can stick that thing. And in so many words, I was talking to him about it, and he said there were some shots that he took because everybody's been telling him to be more aggressive. And he said he took some shots that maybe he wouldn't have taken a couple of weeks ago. And I kind of asked him, why wouldn't he have taken those earlier? And in so many words, basically, he's the new guy. He's a transfer on a new team. He wanted to get other guys involved. He didn't want to show up as the new guy running the point and chucking his shots, right? But now he's winning those guys over. They're becoming a team and all that. Now he's getting a little more comfortable to look for his own shot, and I think that's going to help the offense. And I think there's a higher ceiling of potential for the entire offense. And before long, I think that you will think that Walker is a good passer. Now, he's not Winston. Winston was a great passer, right? He was a great passer. He kind of had like a Spider-Man sense. I really think the game was slower for him. And the great ones are like that. Whether it be Magic or Gretzky, Montana, probably Brady. There's a few of them. The quarterback for Kansas City is probably like that. There's some guys, they just process between the ears at a different clip than everybody else. And I think Winston was that way. So I don't think we may never see a passer quite like Cassius Winston. But I think Walker's good. And he can shoot it.
Fair. Yeah, and you can't dump on a guy for not being, as good as, legend. So
yeah. Winston's the all-time leader in assists in the Big Ten. Is that right? Did he break that record? So Winston was pretty good.
I'm not sure. I know he was very close to 2,000 points and 1,000 assists, which is pretty epic. You brought up football. That's a good transition to my second and final question. There was all these projections about Michigan State's going to play Notre Dame in the Fiesta Bowl, in the weeks leading up to the New Year's Six announcements in the playoff, the College Football Playoff Selection Committee giving us the final, schedule. Is there any, can you just kind of give us some insight into what role, if any, do the bowls have in kind of trying to request certain matchups, or, is it possible? I'm not trying to be all conspiracy theory, but is it possible that the Fiesta Bowl said, hey, we don't want a team, from the Midwest that's too far. We don't think they're going to travel, or is it totally all done behind closed doors, independently? Can you just give us some kind of indication here? Because every projection I saw was like, oh, that's locked and loaded. Is that just a case of the analysts being dead wrong, or was there some sort of bait and switch behind the scenes that we don't know about, or what's your read on that?
I don't know how they do it these days, honestly. I heard Greg Ianni talking about it on the Stout Show earlier this week here in Lansing, and Ianni is former deputy athletic director at Michigan State. He's aware of a lot of those things the way it used to be 2 or 3 years ago. It used to be that there would be like a draft, like, the bowl that is not in the playoffs this year gets first pick, and then there's like some sort of draft. He's one thing he said this week is that ESPN is in the room. How much power they have in doing things, I'm not sure. Those matchups are for television, obviously. Is it a regional thing? I do know that it's my understanding that athletic departments don't do as much to try to sell themselves as they used to, because I think it's a little bit more. It's a little bit more cut and dried, the way things are going to be. But I honestly don't know what kind of backroom dealings or what went into all of that. If you're a Los Angeles guy, I'm sure you wanted them to play in Arizona, right?
Yeah.
So I the Pittsburgh matchup's going to be good. I thought it would have been better for the program to play Notre Dame, but does Phoenix get more out of getting? So I've not really thought about it that much. So does Phoenix get more out of? Does the Fiesta Bowl get more out of having? Who are they playing? Oklahoma State.
Yeah, Oklahoma State is a lot closer to Phoenix than Michigan State is. So maybe they just say, hey, we already got Notre Dame. That's one Midwest team. Are we going to ask 2 Midwest teams to go to the West Coast? I don't know.
That makes sense. Rather than crisscrossing them back the other way. That makes sense. As far as the Peach Bowl goes, this is the first time since 1985 that the Peach Bowl has not had a Southern team in it. Now, the Peach Bowl used to be, kind of a mid-level bowl game, kind of like the Liberty Bowl or the Gator Bowl or something like that. And, they've done a great job in increasing the level of that bowl game in recent years, and the new stadium has a lot to do with that. So they've become, obviously, a New Year's Six bowl. They used to call them major bowls. You can call them a major. It didn't used to be a major bowl, but now they're a major bowl. But if you're going to be a major bowl, sometimes you have teams that are from outside of your region. And we've seen that in the Orange Bowl in recent years, where the Orange Bowl's only been half full, like when Syracuse plays Kansas State or something like that, going back 15 years. So now the Peach Bowl, for the first time since '85, does not have a Southern team. When those mid-level bowls, you kind of need that regional anchor to help your ticket sales. And in 1985, it was Illinois against Army at the Peach Bowl, and it only drew 29,000. Now, that was on like a New Year's Day Eve. So now there's a challenge. You got Michigan State and Pittsburgh, 2 non-Southern teams. So we'll see how the Peach Bowl draws. I think Pittsburgh's going to have a pretty good showing because it's the first time they've had a 10-win season since 1981. And Michigan State's had a really good season. And, Mel Tucker says Michigan State's fans are hungry. We're going to get an idea of how hungry they are. But that's a big stadium. And I think 45,000 might be a good crowd, but it might look empty with only 45,000. But I think 45 would be a decent turnout. I don't know if Peach Bowl people would agree with me about that or not.
Yeah, I also don't like that it's the only bowl that's not of the New Year's Six. that's not on New Year's Eve or New Year's Day. It's on the 30th. So I think that kind of hurts as well. A lot of people, I think, are going to be, working on the 30th, and maybe you can take the 31st off, and the first, I believe, is the Saturday, but to just take off the whole weekend, I think kind of hurts as well. I just thought of I know I promised that was my last question. You can kick me off at any time, but if you will indulge me, we were talking about Harlan Barnett earlier. Obviously, he has a long-standing relationship with Narduzzi, knows that scheme inside and out. Do you think, and this is kind of a worst-case scenario matchup for Michigan State going against Kenny Pickett, as opposed to, I also think, from X's and O's, Notre Dame would have been a better game for us, not just brand and location. But do you think there's anything, that kind of having that deep knowledge of what Narduzzi's trying to do can kind of help us at all, or do you think he's evolved? Because he's been at Pitt, 6-7 years now, something like that.
7.
Is he still
7.
basically running that? Is he? Are we going to be able to kind of use that history to maybe find the weaknesses? Because we're going to have to put up points. There's no doubt about it. Any kind of insider intel you think could maybe help us attack what they're doing? What are your thoughts on that?
I think I've been wondering the same thing. And their defense, I've not studied them yet, but I was watching that Wake Forest game in passing, and I watched some of their North Carolina game in passing because I like watching Pittsburgh. And their defense looks like the old Michigan State. And I asked Pat Narduzzi about that on Sunday at the initial press conference, whether Michigan State fans would recognize, some of those old Michigan State elements as part of the Pitt Panther defense. And he said, yeah, you'll recognize a lot of it. I mean, they have 4 down, and then on 3rd downs, you'll see them bring those Narduzzi blitzes. And I think a lot of times with cover 3 in the back, that's what they always did. When Michigan State blitzed back then, it was very predictable that it'd be cover 3 in the back. Tressel and Barnett tried diversifying that a little bit more to try to change the coverages a little bit more behind the blitzes to make it a little less predictable. I've got to watch more Pittsburgh to see if they've done that. Now, I know when he first got to Pittsburgh, they had a nightmarish game against Oklahoma State and Gundy and those guys, where Oklahoma State just scored at will. I think they scored 56 points. They blew Pittsburgh out. And, with that defense, they usually give up that slot out like Baylor did. Baylor completed 17 passes for 250 of the yardage that they put up against Michigan State in the 2014 Cotton Bowl, which was Narduzzi's last game at Michigan State. Yeah,
I remember that well.
And that was unnerving, for Michigan State to stick with that philosophy. Where that game went off the rails for Michigan State, they wanted to bend but don't break, don't give up the big one, get in the red zone and make stops. Problem is, Baylor scored from outside the red zone a couple times. They scored on a double pass trick play, and one time they got someone deep on a deep seam against one of those blitzes, and then they had that trick play to the big offensive lineman on the tackle eligible. Remember that one? So Baylor, when Baylor got in the red zone, Michigan State did a pretty good job stopping them in the red zone. Baylor scored a lot of points, but Baylor also attempted more field goals in that game than Baylor had attempted all year in a game. So Michigan State succeeded in some regards, but they gave up those big ones and got behind on the scoreboard. Turns out Baylor couldn't run the ball. Michigan State got the ball back, made some big plays, won the game. Just an emotional game, a very exciting game. But Michigan State stayed with their style and ended up winning, but I'm not sure their style, I'm not sure they believed coming out of that their style was flawless. I think that they've, as they got into 2015, got in the playoff, and then they met Alabama and the problems they presented. By the way, when Baylor was doing that in 2014, Baylor was running RPOs at that time, and the word RPO had not yet entered the football lexicon. They invented it. Art Briles and those guys, and I don't have much respect for Briles in a lot of ways, but what they did with RPOs, they changed college football, and that was different. I remember Narduzzi talking about Baylor before the game, and he was saying the closest way I can describe it is every run is also a pass, and every pass is also a run. Basically, they threw the ball behind run blocking. So it was hard to pass rush on them because D-line had to check up and play the run first, and quarterbacks making reads, and it was really hard to stop, and everybody in college football runs it now. But Baylor was the first one to do it, and they were a handful, and they had talent, and they were hard to stop. So anyway, so they had that same – he took that same philosophy to Pittsburgh, and it was going to take them a while to get it established. In the meantime, they played Oklahoma State in the second or third year, and Oklahoma State just basically went Baylor on them and then some. But – Tressel and Narduzzi changed the defense at Michigan State. I would say they updated it. In 2015, in blitzes, Michigan State, or some of their pressures, they started playing more cover two, Norm Parker stuff in passing situations. Not all the time, just here and there. But anyway, they updated it. They were a little less predictable on what they ran and coverage-wise behind blitzes. And if they didn't blitz, they also changed it up a little bit more. But they were still press quarters like Narduzzi installed. But Tressel and Narduzzi just updated it a little bit. Now, has Narduzzi updated his at Pittsburgh? I've not studied it yet, but the base is still the same. Now, your question is, Michigan State's knowledge of that, can they help? I would imagine so, and that's what I'm wondering. When they have their sit-down in their war room meetings, does Mel Tucker get with Jay Johnson and say, hey, Harlan, what are some of the weaknesses in this Narduzzi defense? You coached with him for 5 years. I would assume that question gets asked, and I assume Harlan has some input on that. And, and Narduzzi knows that that's coming too, so will he zig when he thinks that Harlan's going to tell them that they're going to be zagging on this? I don't know. But it's all fun and it's all interesting. And to answer your question, I do think that some of that intel can help Michigan State. Now, Ron Burton was part of it too, but that's just he's a D-line coach. It's probably not he wouldn't have as much intel, I wouldn't think, as Barnett on the way Pittsburgh's going to be playing defense and what can work against it. As you well know, and a lot of people listening, something that often hurt Michigan State when they played that quarter zone was the wheel route. There's just a way to run that corner off the sideline and follow it with a wheel, and that linebacker's got to shoot out there and cover him right now. And if you can drag race that linebacker, you can get a play. You might remember in the early days of the Antonio era, the wheel route was a problem. So maybe Michigan State can get into the wheel route a little bit against the old Narduzzi defense. We'll have to wait and see.
Well, absolutely, yeah. Yes, I do remember that trick play. I thought that was the nail in the coffin when Baylor hit that. I think that put them up 20 points, if I'm not mistaken, and I totally agree that field goals were huge in that game. There was one where Connor Cook threw a pick, and it looked like it was going to be a pick six, and Tony Lippert ran the guy down and tackled him, and there was a penalty, and it looked like it was maybe a horse collar, but they actually called a legal face mask on the Baylor player and brought it back. And I believe they held that to a field goal attempt. So, yeah, touchdowns versus field goals is always massive in these football games. But, yeah, what I was thinking, the Will Route, you bring up an excellent point there, but I was thinking also Northwestern always used to hit these D'Antonio Narduzzi teams, with these crossing patterns over the middle. I was thinking maybe we could try some of that. I don't know how, if you're saying it basically is just as good as, what Michigan State was running in the heyday of D'Antonio, I don't know how we're going to run the ball comp.
Right.
So that's, we got to come up with something, so yeah, it'll be interesting to watch.
You're right. Pittsburgh's number one in the ACC, not surprisingly, in stopping the run, under 3 yards a carry, something like 2.5, 2.1. They're, I think, in the top 10 in rush defense. They will be set out to stop the run. They will set out to stop Kenneth Walker. No question about it. It's going to be difficult. Michigan State has to be balanced, has to get something going through the air. And in the meantime, Michigan State's got to stop Kenny Pickett. It's not a good matchup for Michigan State. There's horses for courses, styles make fights. And Michigan State and Pittsburgh would probably have similar records against similar schedules, but against one another, Penn State, I think, matches up well. Pittsburgh matches up well with Michigan State. But we will see if Walker plays. We'll see if Pickett plays. And, Michigan State, a lot of times in some of these intersectional games can, think about being the more physical team like they were against Miami. But Pittsburgh's got the same mentality. So that edge won't be there either. It's going to be tough.
Yeah, and I've read things about Pickett saying he's undecided. I saw somebody ask Walker post game, maybe it was you, whether he planned on playing, and he said at this point, he does. Obviously those are guys that have a lot of money on the line, so can't begrudge either of them, if they want to make a business decision. I think Tucker said, regardless if guys play or not, choose to opt out, he's gonna support it 100%. I'm sure everybody on this call remembers, Kenny Willekes coming back for, I think it was the Red Box Bowl, and ended up getting injured and couldn't enter the draft, after that season, which was really the best season at Michigan State. So, you can't begrudge a guy one way or the other, but, saying you're undecided, that certainly doesn't sound like you're all in. So I don't know how good their backup is, but if Kenny Pickett does choose to sit out, which would be very reasonable in my mind, that could be a huge boost for us. All right, Comp, I've taken up way too much of your time. Thanks a lot for all you do. Thanks for the great coverage. And you didn't ask me to do this. You don't know me at all. But just for anybody listening who's not subscribed, I would just say really, really consider going over to SpartanMag.com. There's a ton of excellent intel. You're going to hear about things before it's in the media. You're going to get all of the best insights. It's just astounding to me how plugged in everybody is over there. So, and it's quite affordable. It's really, really cheap, actually, if you think about it. So, just a little plug there for you. All right, man. Have a great night. Thanks again.
Thanks a lot. I really appreciate that, Taylor from Los Angeles. Really appreciate you calling in and your kind words. And hey, it's open mic night. We'll take a few more calls here. And if you're a good caller, we might leave you on for a few minutes. It's not like a radio show where we got to run and go and all those things. We will we'll get it rolling. We'll let you talk a little bit. Now, what do we have here? Is this the one? That's what it looked like earlier. I don't know if the sound is in on that one or not, but that's East Lansing a couple days ago. And it's football season. There's one more to go. It's a bowl game down in Atlanta. But that's what your stadium looked like a couple days ago here in beautiful East Lansing, Michigan. Let's go back to the mailbag. And see what other questions we've got. Sparty from Pawleys Island, South Carolina, same question, wondering who is the Comparoni Power 5 indexed list of the Big Ten hoops teams so far. We already went over that. But let's go over here to the comments and reactions, the chat area. And let's see what we got here. I'm not sure who this is, but we'll second time they called, and it's from British Columbia, Canada. That's what it said. If they call back, we'll give it a shot. Simmons gone, Elijah gone. YT Spartan asks, I don't know, not that I've heard, but it is the era of the transfer portal, and you never know. What do we have here? Oh, we've got a Michigan fan in here? Oh, this guy. Sorry I didn't get that on that earlier. Been on there for a while. We never heard from him during the season, did we? Let's see if this is a Michigan fan.
Sam.
To accept, press 1. To send a voicemail, press 2.
We'll go with it. Sam. Sam, welcome to SpartanMag Live. You're on the air.
Jim, how are you?
Good, Sam. Welcome to the show. Thanks for calling. Are you calling in from British Columbia, Canada?
Well, I lived I was living in Vancouver, British Columbia, but I've recently moved back to East Lansing, Michigan, of all places.
All right, good.
Yeah.
Good. So your phone was listed beautiful Vancouver, British Columbia.
Yeah, I still have the phone number from Vancouver, BC.
All right.
Yeah,
All
but
right.
I'm living in lovely East Lansing right now.
Sounds great. What's going on, Sam?
Comp wanted to know if you wanted to maybe talk a little hoops since we got SpartanMag Live going. A lot of football questions. You know, I love hoops. You've listened to me talk about hoops a little bit in the past, so just wanted to see if you what you're thinking on this basketball team in this young season. I've been impressed by what I've seen so far, by and large.
I'm impressed too, and I'm not surprised. Not surprised. Christie is better on defense than I expected. I expected him to be better, to be shooting better than this.
Yeah.
And I think that'll come. It won't be easy. Like I said earlier, they're asking him to do so much that the freshman wall could have an impact on him.
Do you think that Jaden Akins could maybe fill in some of that? I feel like MSU could stand to play him more. I really like what I'm seeing out of him.
Yeah, he's doing a great job. That block shot he had against Minnesota was excellent. the jumpers he made
he's a
against
dog.
the jump shots he made against Toledo were excellent. Yeah, he's excellent. He's good. He's physical. Like Izzo says, he's smart as a whip. He's a team guy. Izzo loves him. He's an athlete. He's a Michigan State guy, obviously. And they can give more to Christie, especially if Christie doesn't come around. If the shooting never comes around, then I could see those guys going 50-50 in minutes. But, yeah, Akins can help. He can help alleviate some of that stopper role that Christie's playing.
You can play them together. Like
Yeah.
Christie's definitely got the size to guard most threes that you're going to see in college.
Mm-hmm.
And then, this is one of the things I wanted to get your thoughts on is I feel like, number 10 had a good game against Minnesota, and that was good to see. But, that's been a bit of a problem for them when Malik Hall is not on the floor at the 4 spot. So I feel like Gabe Brown has got the size to play a little stretch 4 for you. You can play with Christie at the 3, a little more Akins, maybe some Pierre Brooks here and there. I think going smaller would be an option for them. I don't know. What do you think about that?
If you're playing Brown at the 4, that
Well,
means
you'd probably have to have Bingham or Sissoko to clean up.
yeah, but
I think with those guys, you could get away with it.
if you have Gabe Brown at the 4, then that means Malik Hall's playing less. So I'm not sure that's a good trade. And Gabe Brown is tall.
It's more to replace the other. It's to replace the other guy in the 4 rotation who
Hauser?
has not had the best season so far. Yeah, I don't want to pick on him. I'm trying to be nice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, people have talked about that with Gabe Brown. Playing bigger with him because he is 6'8", but we've not seen a lot of that. So I don't. More likely we're seeing Hall play the 3 a little bit more. So. But you're right. Akins and Christie can play together if you jostle it around the other way. I think Hauser played pretty well last night. Hauser led the team in plus minus last night. But you're right. I mean, there's some awkward moments, and Izzo's trying to bring him around. And
I'm just thinking, there's going to be moments later in this season when, I don't know, maybe he'll just put it together, but. If he's having the deer in the headlights situation and, you're in a road game at Wisconsin, like, you're going to have to go to something. Malik Hall can't just play every single minute. So just thinking about, like, other things they could go to. But I don't know, Comp, are you on this site called Hoop Lens? Do you know about this?
No.
Okay, so they've got, like, points per possession, kind of on-floor, off-floor stuff, looking at different lineup combinations and things like that, and you can sort of go by player, you can go by different groups of players, look at the performance of the team when they're on the floor versus off.
Mm-hmm.
So basically what you do, I have a subscription from back in the podcast days and they haven't kicked me off yet. So who do you think in MSU's main rotation right now has the best margin, the best difference between their offensive and defensive points per possession?
And that's basically plus minus?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay.
Per possession. Plus minus per possession.
Malik Hall is probably pretty good.
Exactly. Yep, Malik Hall. Sissoko's number 1, 82 possessions on offense, 80 on defense, limited numbers. Pierre Brooks is number 2, again, limited numbers. Although those guys have both looked good in limited run. But yeah, it's Malik Hall, then Tyson Walker, then Bingham, then it kind of clusters in there with Christie, Brown, Akins. Then you got Marble, then Hogard, and then there's a little gap, and then Joey Hauser after that. So, I think that's kind of been the story for me of the years is Hall is the rug that ties the room together. If you've ever seen The Big Lebowski, he's just a lot of really good players, a lot of toughness, a lot of good shooting. Really like what I'm seeing from them, but I think Hall has been kind of the linchpin from what I've seen so far, and they need him to be.
Yes. I think that Izzo's aware that Hauser's struggling, obviously, and he's picking his words wisely. And I think Izzo is starting Hauser because he believes that's the best way to bring him along. I think Izzo knows that Hall is the better player now, and Hall is playing more minutes.
Of course.
But it's a long play for Izzo. He's pulling levers and pushing buttons, and he's investing minutes in him. And if they can get Hauser to iron out some of these wrinkles, and then later Hauser becomes a 14-minute guy. When you get in the NCAA tournament, good players get their minutes reduced, and I think Hall eventually becomes the starter, and Hauser. If you can get like 16 good minutes out of Hauser, it can really help the team, especially if he's stretching the floor. And he's played good defense against some guys. Everybody that gets it tries to drive against him, and sometimes he shuts it down on those guys pretty good. Well enough.
He also, part of it, what Izzo's doing, it makes sense just because of the player combos, because he's playing Hauser with Bingham, and then he's bringing in Hall and Marble, and they're playing together, and Hall's better. He's going to give Marble less messes to clean up, and Marble's less capable, obviously, than Bingham of doing so. And you have Bingham to kind of, pick up for Hauser in terms of rim protection and defense on that end. So
I hadn't thought about it that way. I hadn't thought about it that way. You're right. That's interesting.
Yeah, and I think that that's what you're seeing. Like Hogard, these lineups with Hogard in there are doing really well, and I think Hogard has had some good moments, but it's also like you get Hogard on the floor with Christie, Brown, Hall, and Marble, and it's like, that's a really nice lineup, and that's set up well. Like Walker would do probably just as well, if not better, with that group. But he's balancing the different elements of the team, and he's also, you can tell, like experimenting with different things. You saw Sissoko play a little bit more in this game in the second half. A lot of times he gets the first half only minutes. What do you think about him? I'm so intrigued by him. With Bingham, this MSU team, they're playing way more drop on pick and roll. I'm sure you've noticed that with Bingham kind of just, they're not hedging out with him as aggressively because he's able to do the Joel Embiid routine where you just kind of hold your arms out and cover both the ball handler and the roll man. And Sissoko allows you to kind of do the same thing. He's got that crazy length, crazy athleticism to keep that sort of rim protection identity. Marble obviously gives you much more on the offensive end. He's kind of like a, discount store sale rack Nick Ward on offense a little bit, but, not a dominant post player, but he gives you something. So I can see the benefits of each, and I'm not saying Marble should play less, but I'm very intrigued by Sissoko, the little flashes that he has.
The first game of the year, I thought that Sissoko was just as good as Bingham, but it's not been that way since then. Bingham has really done well, and Sissoko is on the scout team and getting a few minutes here and there. I think Bingham is a key reason why Michigan State's defense is better this year than last year. I think his ball screen defense is excellent, the way he can cover ground, like you're saying, on whether it be the hedge help recover or if he jumps out and traps it or feathers it or whatever they do. He gets out and affects ball screen offense and then also protects the rim real well. He's doing both.
Yeah.
And he spends a lot of energy to do that. And he does it well. He's kind of feathered it a little bit more, like you said, in the ball screen. But, Michigan State, they've been doing more of that. But when they face a team with a point guard that can really shoot it, then you'll see the ball screen defense change a little bit more. Or if it's a guy that can't shoot, it's all
Bingham. If you have Bingham and Walker or Akins or even Christie as your combo, the ability of Bingham to just drop and completely swap and just have one of those guys chase it over the top and stay attached and prevent the pull-up three, it just gives you a little more flexibility versus the, trying to do hedge and recover, X outs, or kind of these other like Izzo classics. With Tillman, you could just switch everything, and that makes your life really easy. But, Bingham has a different, I think, strength and skill set, although he's almost as effective. Fewer are ever or have ever been as effective as Tillman, but Bingham, I agree with you, man. He can really mess your whole program up on defense with the pick and roll stuff.
And ball screen defense is so important, so important. I was watching Michigan State go through a walkthrough today, getting ready for Penn State, and the coaching is high level at Michigan State. Everybody knows that, and with college basketball now with a 30-second shot clock for the last 7 or 8 years or whatever, I think that's led to more homogenized offenses. I think you got more and more. Teams are all doing the same things. There's less variety. Yeah. There's not enough time on the shot clock for Bo Ryan to get into his whole offense. That's why he retired. And Virginia won a national title with Virginia won the national title with the 30-second shot clock. But there's part of me that believes that the 30-second shot clock was put in to beat Virginia. I think Duke had a lot to do with it because Duke was tired of losing to Virginia in the ACC standings. But they won a national title with the 30. I like the 35. So now with 30, you get it across the timeline. You've got it. People think 5 seconds is not that big of a deal. It's 3 passes, 2.5. So that changes what you can do on offense. So everybody's doing a lot of the same things on offense, and that comes down to talent and execution and stuff. But to me, the thing that's separating the coaches these days is defense. Like Beard down in Texas and when he was at Texas Tech.
Yep.
And I think, what they've done in Virginia, and I think Purdue's going to be real good in defense, and Duke's been real good at that over the years. I'm who's another young coach that's really, really great at defense? Beard is one. There's someone else. But anyway, Izzo's very good at defense, and his staff is very good, and that's the difference maker in college basketball right now. It's not necessarily a guarantee difference maker day in and day out, week in and week out, but over the course of 100 games, top defense, if coaching is gonna that makes a difference, big difference.
Well, when you give Izzo the stuff that he has this year, and this team, the thing is, I think the defensive talent that Michigan State has could be successful with a lot of schemes. Actually, I think it's a great personnel for a zone. If you think about Bingham, Brown, Hall, Christie, all those guys with their long arms everywhere playing zone, I think would be very effective. But having Bingham behind, and then having Walker at the point of attack, and Akins and Christie and all these guys. And Brown is not a bad defender. He's not like an ultra elite defender or anything. Hall, that guy from Minnesota tried to run Hall around screens for 20 seconds, and he was just in his hip pocket, the whole time. So I think the defensive personnel is great, but I agree the scheme, the way that they're playing things, it's the classic Izzo pack line stuff. It's just done beautifully, and they've got the personnel for it to really do it. Especially, I think Walker, like Izzo, must just absolutely love Walker and his defense, and that was not a foul. By the way, that transition thing, where he got called for the block for his third foul, that was not a foul. That was Matt McQuaid style. Got his chest in the way defense. So who do you think was the last point of attack defender MSU had that was as good as Walker? Would you say Tum Tum, or would you have to go back farther than that?
Yeah, I thought Nairn was pretty good, and Walker is amazing with his hands. He gets his hands on so many deflections, and he gets called for fouls once in a while on it. But there are some guys that their hands are so fast.
Not taking that many chances. He's
and you're talking. You mentioned Sissoko earlier.
He's just being quick.
You mentioned Sissoko earlier, and he made a mistake last night when he went for a blocked shot. And he's in there, and he's trying to
exactly what you're
trying to do everything that he can, and he's trying to make an impact in limited minutes. And bless his heart, he's urgent, and his motor's on, and he's trying to. But and Izzo's never been big on teaching block shots. If you can do it, that's great. And his best defenses have had rim protectors like that. But if you go for a blocked shot, you better block it. Because if you don't, and the shot goes up, now you're a man down on the boards, and Sissoko's man got to put back on that because he missed a blocked shot. He's never.
I remember the exact play.
So Sissoko, he needs to, he's got to stay within his shoes, and he's got some skills, offensive skills.
Teach him how to play. Like he hasn't been playing for that long, right?
Yeah, he's still new to it. And this year, as far as the rotations go, Michigan State is playing 5 bigs, and last year they played 6.
Yeah.
And I thought that slowed the development of all 6 of them because they're also playing Kithier, of course, and they're also playing who else?
Yep.
I forget who the 6th one was, but none of them ended up getting enough minutes. And it stunted all of their growth. This year they're playing 4. They've got 5 big men, but they're really only playing 4. They're trying to get Sissoko in there, and I think Sissoko's got ability, but Bingham's coming along, and Marble's only
Marble's better than Sissoko right now for sure. But
and Marble's only
free.
if you look the last few games, Marble's only playing 13, 14, 15 minutes. I'd like to see him play more.
Yeah.
So to get Sissoko on there, someone's got to play less. And then last night they're playing Hauser at the 5 a little bit, which took minutes away from all of them. And Minnesota it matched up.
What did you think about that?
I don't know Minnesota well enough to know whether that was a defensive matchup that was good or if Michigan State wanted to spread the floor with 5. I don't even remember what sets Michigan State ran to go with that, but. They're trying to get Marble more minutes, trying to get Sissoko more minutes, and that's not one way to do it. That's for sure. So I don't know if that's a long-term plan. That game, it wasn't like a mop-up deal where they were experimenting. It's not like they were playing high point and just trying to run some experiments. Yeah. So I'd seen Minnesota a little bit, but I didn't know them well enough to know whether that was some sort of matchup they wanted to go at, and I'd have to rewatch it to see what Michigan State did offensively. And I didn't ask Izzo. Izzo talked about that. Talked about Hauser at the 5 today, but he didn't get into the why on that one. Yeah. So it was peculiar.
I understand that teams like to go small at the end, especially if the other team's going to be going for 3s. But I was watching that thinking, I'd rather just have Bingham just standing around the rim, cutting off the easy 2s here.
As I think about it,
Bingham can shoot free throws too. So I thought that was curious.
As I think about it, the one thing about it with Hauser. Maybe, Minnesota was winning the points in the paint last night. Maybe, you've got, what was the guy's name? Curry. Curry was having a pretty good game. So on defense, if you've got Hauser out there, that takes Curry away from the rim, and they may not have had any other bigs. And they maybe thought they could get something with a drive off of that. I'm not sure. Like I said, I don't know what Michigan State ran. I'd have to go back and look at it.
Of course.
That's one thing that pops in my head in terms of a plus to go with that group. But it was peculiar.
Yeah, definitely peculiar. But what do you mentioned the 35-second shot clock. If I might, I'd like to briefly argue the other side of that, which is, so you're watching a Big Ten game that doesn't have Michigan State in it. It's just like Rutgers versus Indiana or whatever. Rutgers moves the ball around. They do nothing on offense. They run a whole set. They get it out, and you're thinking, okay, this possession must be ending soon. And then they look up at the shot clock, and there's still 15. And they get to do a whole nother thing. That was the 35-second shot clock to me. So the 30-second, I like the urgency of it. Like, you got to keep moving. And, you mentioned that teams are starting to play more similar to one another. I don't know. I still think MSU basketball still has the same flavor that it's had forever. It's evolved over time, of course, but to me, it's still, of course, the defense and the rebound and all that. But the side-to-side motion offense, wanting to try to enter the ball into the post, hitting ball screens off of ball and player movement, not just doing a slow ISO at the top of the key. You can do that with Cassius Winston and Tillman, but generally they move the ball around, trying to play in transition. I still find all of those elements to be there, and I still also find those appealing. I don't know. You've been covering MSU for God knows how many years. Do you still enjoy watching them sort of play the hits, sort of still doing this style?
Sure. And, they still run some Heathcote plays that, that play where they feed the high post and the point guard comes and sets a screen at the free throw line and the post guy looks for the first duck in, then the second duck in. They've been doing that since Heathcote. I've seen some different things with the baseline inbound plays. Doug Wojcik has more to do with baseline inbound plays this year. It was Garland for a few years, but Wojcik is running those in practice now. And you've seen some different things there with some dribble handoff things in the Bahamas that were a little different. Yeah, and Izzo, he's got some set plays or some favorite plays that always show up. But you watch, they get halfway through the season and they'll change it up. They'll start going to some other tangents. They realize that they're scouted and they can't run the same They'll establish something, and then a few weeks later they'll go to that tendency and then break off another tangent off of it, and it changes a little bit here and there. With the shorter shot clock, I don't think Michigan State runs quite as many as some of those old box sets they used to run.
Yep.
And but still everybody's running side ball screen stuff, high ball screen. Last night, I mentioned this in my article today, and Brian Butch was talking about it a little bit, although they didn't really diagram it, but the wedge screen, helped free up Gabe Brown for a new play on that skip pass to the right corner when he had that 3-pointer with 4 minutes to go in the game. The wedge screen is just, it's just a way to get the defense moving a little bit more. So the guy that goes to set the ball screen gets a screen before he sets it, which causes a little more movement. They're calling that a wedge screen. And, Michigan State started doing that last year. And other teams do that too, but they did it for Brown. Like Brown, most of his 3-pointers are on the left wing. On that one, he's over on the left side, and he sets the wedge screen, and then he sprints to the other side. You don't see Gabe Brown over on the right side of the court very much. But on that play, he set the wedge screen and went right over there, and Walker got the sideball screen and looked to skip it over there to him. That was a set play all the way. Something I've never seen them do.
Really?
They ran it with 4 minutes to go, and it was, sometimes Izzo late in the game, you'll see him, he'll pull out his laminated script, and he'll have, plays that he wants to run at the end of the game. He used to keep those on the inside, the inside breast pocket of his jacket, sports coat, but he don't wear suits anymore, so it's not there. I don't know where he keeps it now. But you'll see, especially when you get to March in key games, he'll pull that thing out sometimes to remind himself of which plays they put in that he wants to run late, that have not been scouted, that the opponent has not seen, and that was one they pulled out in that game. So he's always adding stuff.
That's a great little nugget. I actually didn't realize that was a set play. I thought he just, I saw the wedge screen. I didn't even notice that Brown had been a part of that. I thought he was just standing weak side corner, and Walker just found him. So great little nugget there. All right, Jim. Well, this was awesome. Thanks for having me on the show. Great to chat hoops with you. Would love to do it again in the future.
Sounds great, Sam. Appreciate you. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you around town. Say hi if you see me around town, man. Take care.
All right. I will, Jim. Talk to you soon.
All right, there goes Sam. Appreciate him calling in. All right, it's about 11:30. We're going to wrap it up here in a moment, but let me go through the I'm getting some text from my man Conan Dyke. He's asking me some questions. I'll get to him in a minute. He's asking me some questions about SpartanMag.com and some of the other articles that are on tap over there. Let me go up here to the comments and reactions, because last couple of weeks I've not given enough run to these comments over here, and I don't want to neglect them. I think there was some trash talking going on with a Michigan fan who dropped by. It's good to see him. What do we have here? Again, we appreciate Don Strait, his contribution. Personal sponsorship at the proceedings tonight. Got to go green from Adam Outdoor Bushcraft. Adam Outdoor Bushcraft. I'll bet that guy's got his muzzle loader ready to go here in a couple weeks. Gonna get up north. Creme brulee is good, says Emerald Diamond. Creme brulee is good. I'm not going to lie to you. I'm not afraid of some of the frou-frou desserts. I'm not going to lie to you. And Marco Rolo agrees with me on that. Sea Dog saying K9 had a good night. Kelp speaking out about K9 not being in New York. James Bannon says, how do you rate the quality of the recruits visiting campus on their own dime? Something I've not thought about. I can't, off the top of my head, there have been a few, like some of those juniors that came in for the Michigan game, like the corner from Seattle, a 4-star. Yeah, we've never seen that before in terms of the juniors from across the country coming in. That's different. There's not been a lot of them because that's hard to do, but it's different. Jason G says, if Pickett plays in the bowl game and Michigan State dominates, Pickett's stock will drop hard. That's true, but the Heisman will have already been handed out by then, my man. Kelp saying something else about throwing a brick at the TV. I only appreciate real content. Says, hey, Jim, great night to hear some Spartan Mag. Thank you, real content. Appreciate that. Here's a problem, though. We're doing this show here, which prevents me from putting up content over at SpartanMag.com, but my guys are doing a good job over there, as always, and I have to keep an eye on here to make sure nothing pertinent needs my attention in my real job. My real job being publisher of SpartanMag.com. And if you're new, drop it in, go over to SpartanMag.com, become a subscriber. You won't regret it. All right, Doak Walker awarded to the nation's best running back, Kenneth Walker, says C-Dog. What else do we have here? I'm going to go back to the mailbag first and see if I make sure I'm not overlooking any questions over there. We appreciate the callers. I would put the phone number back up, but it's getting late. All right, here's one from BB Slim out of Ormond Beach, Florida. And he says, Jim, assuming he gets his personal issues resolved, what do you think the chances are that Horst returns next year? I think there's a good chance of that. And that is our last question for the mailbag. Horst left, was not available after the Michigan game. Now he's available again, and we talked about it a little bit. It kind of, people have mentioned a little bit about it, and I don't want to dig into it too much. I mean, I do want to dig into it, but I don't want to divulge too much. But yeah, Horst is, going through some things, working out some things, and it's my understanding he's back on campus this week, and they had some individual workouts. And I think he might have been out there. I don't know for sure, though, but I heard something about that. I've not confirmed it, but I don't doubt it. If he's back, I think they got some things they got to work through, and a lot of people are pulling for him. So it would not shock me if he's a part of it next year. They've got some, similar to when Connor Hayward was trying to get back on the team, similar to when Jacob Panishik said a few things after one of the assistant coaches was not retained last year. Had to have a sit down and work through some things. But there's a lot of people that care about Horst, and wouldn't surprise me if he's back next year. I still would not be surprised if Michigan State goes after a transfer portal offensive lineman. I'll look into that a little more closely here in the days ahead. A guy named Big Will says, do you expect Michigan State to switch defensive schemes with these linebacker additions? It seems they have a lot of linebackers to run linebackers run a 4-2-5. It seems like they're switching fronts. Big Will, no, I don't agree with that. I think that they're still recruiting to a 4-2-5. Michigan State's got a shortage of linebackers right now. They finished the season with Halliday, Harvey, and then basically Nateote was the next linebacker off the bench. They didn't have Crouch for the Penn State game. There was a walk-on named Terry O'Connor that played a little bit last year, tiny bit, repped as a second stringer, but I've not seen him this year. And then you've got Cole DeMarzo, who's not been on the field, and Carson Castile was injured this year, so he's not on the field. He's a true freshman. Other than that, I don't think there's any other scholarship linebackers. Tank Brown is technically a scholarship linebacker, but he's more of a defensive end, DPR, designated pass rusher these days. So even when you're playing a 4-2-5 with two linebackers, you still need 6 in the program. You need a 3 deep. And Crouch, Harvey, are they back next year? I think that I'm guessing that's still to be determined. So you bring in these guys. Maybe Michigan State's anticipating losing one of those. So next year you have Nateote, you're going to have Halliday, and you have these two guys that just came in. So if you add Crouch and Harvey, that gives you 6. But then you have DeMarzo and Castile, 7 and 8. That maybe that is too many linebackers. Maybe they think 1 or 2 of those guys won't be around. Maybe 1 or 2 of those guys will be escorted to the portal. So no, I don't think they're going to a 4-3. I think it's more likely you're going to get 1 or 2 portal guys out of that. Or 3. All right, what do we have here? Okay, this is when, let's see, Bjorn Charlie says, yeah, Kenneth Walker won the Walter Camp. Stephen I. Leaf says, Spartan's going to win the Big Ten in hoops. George Page, former keyboard player for Surrender Dorothy, says, any insight on coaching vacancies at Michigan State or head coaches? No, I don't have any insight. I don't even know if they've hired guys at Washington State yet, in Virginia. If Mel Tucker didn't have that contract, I think Oregon would have been going after him. I don't think LSU ever went after him, but there was that specter and that threat, and as long as there's musical chairs going on, at some point, one was going to open up with a lot of money that was going to come after him. Didn't have to be LSU, could have been somebody else. And if they hadn't signed him when they did, right now, Michigan State fans would be worried about the Oregon vacancy. And then if that got filled, they'd be worried about the next one. Gordon Tonona asks, can recruits get free tickets to watch a bowl game? No, I don't believe they can because nobody's really hosting it. But would not surprise me if some of Michigan State's recruiting targets in the Atlanta area end up with tickets. Because there's a lot of Michigan State supporters in the Atlanta area that are involved. BW asks, Jacoby Windman, is he going to be a better transfer than Crouch? Is he going to be a better transfer than Crouch? Yes. Greg Hughes, sorry I didn't get the trash out earlier. My bad. I'm going to need some of you guys to text me when trash alert is going on. All right, so this was the part of the show when you guys were going up against this Michigan guy. Sorry about that. That's my apology. That's my bad. It's kind of hard to handle everything. And I've got, I can't remember if I've got either Sprunger or Jason. One of them has ability to take out the trash. I was trying to get that with Sprunger, and I didn't quite, I don't know, must not have it. Otherwise, he would have done it. But he's busy with other stuff, too. MSU Hunter Spartan says Marcus Bingham looks tired. Hauser still looking for his shot, but has rebounded well. Tyson Walker finding his confidence at the point guard spot. Hogard is playing better. Big Ten may be a bloodbath. That's from MSU Hunter. MSU Hunter Spartan. He's a basketball fan. I like his style. Bingham gets tired. Izzo talks about that. They're trying to manage his the fatigue level. Some of it they think is mental, but Bingham does spend a lot of energy on that hedge help recover on the ball screen and getting back. He spends a lot of energy on defense, to his credit. So I can understand him a little bit getting tired, and I can understand him playing a few fewer minutes than maybe your ordinary anchor big man. Hauser still looking for his shot. True, made a couple nice ones yesterday. Has rebounded well. If he irons it out, I think Hauser can be a plus. I know it's a sticky situation and a controversial subject, but Izzo's going to invest minutes in him because it could pay off later. And
you know,
hey, wait. You're on the air, Nils. Actually, you're not. Do you guys want to hear from Nils Deco? I'll text him and give him the number. If you want to hold on, I'm sure he'll have a lot of things to say. Formerly of the Horn out of Austin, Texas. Hold on. In the meantime, make sure you give us a thumbs up. Make sure you subscribe to the site. Make sure you check out SpartanMag.com. Make sure to get your friends and enemies to become subscribers to SpartanMag.com. So we all can have a joyous new year and holidays. I want to take this time to wish a happy new year and happy holidays to everybody. I'm certainly having happy holidays. I hope you are too. Anyway, we'll see if we get Nils back to call in a second. He's an outstanding Spartan Magger at large. Getting back to MSU Hunter Spartan, he says Tyson Walker finding his confidence at point guard spot. I agree, and like I said a minute ago, he wanted to get other people involved. Now he's looking for a shot, and his shooting percentage is excellent right now. Hogard is playing better, says MSU Spartan. He's doing some things better. You know, when he pushes the ball and probes the defense, he puts pressure on defense. He's a good backup point guard. And it was interesting in Bahamas that they had him finish the game against UConn. I'm not sure he's a game finisher, maybe on defense. Yeah, I think Walker's your game finisher.
Call from
Nils.
to accept, press.
All right, Nils, you are on the air, and you're talking to a world of Michigan State fans. You are talking live on Spartan Mag Live. Let's bring him in, formerly from the Horn, in Austin, Texas. He is and was the founder of Texas Top 100 and JUCO advocate, media man extraordinaire at large, an astute Michigan State observer for decades and generations. He is a generational talent in his own right. Nils Deco. Nils, what's bothering you today? Is it football, basketball, recruiting? What's on your mind?
I mean, well, there's nothing bothering me. I think we're doing pretty well right now. What do you think?
I think it's...
That's done pretty good. I mean,
what is?
all I know is that Gabe Brown can rise up on anybody besides Ben Johnson with a 15-foot jump shot. I don't think there are many people out there that can defend Gabe Brown on the wing when he jab steps and pulls up. I like what Gabe Brown's giving me today or yesterday.
Was not bad, my man. And that was interesting insight from Ben Johnson, the head coach of Minnesota, talking about how they're having trouble.
That post last night was a great night for Big Ten basketball. Like, they had Pizzo and they had Andy Katz and they had Raphael Davis and then Big Brian Bush interviewing Izzo. Like, that might be the greatest interview ever, is Brian Bush interviewing Izzo. Bush is every bit of 7'9", and Izzo whatever he is. It was rather entertaining. I mean, Bush is doing the best job he can, and Izzo was really forthright. I thought it was like, I watched the whole post game. I watched all that, and it's just like, the Big Ten Network. Some nights you get the right game, and like you get the best post game coverage. And so the next night, Rutgers has the biggest upset win in the history of college basketball.
Come on.
Instead of having a game like that,
Yeah.
they go to a women's game, Michigan versus Wisconsin. Like, sometimes you just got to cut the loss and say, you know what, we're not going to televise this game. I'm not trying. I know Tyler Line. I'm going to be a hater, and I don't like women's basketball. I'm just like, someone should have said, you know what, this is probably not the night. I need to talk to Steve Peichel. I need to talk to Matt Painter. Number one went down in Rutgers within 45 minutes in New York City, and Scott Van Pelt on his show is going to say, this is the biggest game of the night. I'm like, how does this happen? Like,
that's
all
a great
the momentum
point.
was just
That's a great point. From a branding standpoint, the Big Ten has been trying and dying to brand Rutgers as a viable entity in college athletics. And they get this win, and they got to sign off and go to a women's basketball game at 9 o'clock. Now, why that happens and why there was so much extensive post-game coverage for Michigan State versus Minnesota last night is because Michigan State versus Minnesota was the late game. It was a 9 o'clock, ends at 11:30. They've got more of a cushion around the midnight hour, right? And their post-game coverage was great. In the studio, on the court, full post-game press conference. It was great, right? For the basketball fan.
It was like the good old days.
If you could have done that for Rutgers and done all that blanketed wall-to-wall coverage at the end, you would have gotten, some Rutgers fans calling each other, hey, check it out, put on the Big Ten Network, and you'd have gotten a few thousand more viewers. I'm not saying that would have moved the Nielsen ratings, but it could have fluffed the pillows in the New York City area for those Rutgers fans.
It's a long-term deal. I mean, tonight was like...
You're right.
I mean,
You're
Purdue
right.
is the first time they've ever been number one. Ron Harper has two of the best shots in the last 20 minutes.
No, wait a minute. Wait. Is it really the first time Purdue's ever been number one? That's not right, is it?
Oh, yeah, forever.
This is the first time they've ever been number one.
100%.
I did not know that. I'm shocked to hear that. And that goes to show how hard it is to become number one. Because Purdue's won more games than anyone in the Big Ten, right? More Big Ten games.
Yeah, I mean, but,
Wow.
they're like Michigan football. Most of them were before 1950. Those don't count.
Agreed.
1950 doesn't exist. Because, I mean, I'm just saying. I'm sorry.
After 1950 is a different era. I'll go back to like 1920, maybe 1915. If the game was not on the radio, it doesn't count. How's that?
Okay, if you're going to do that, then if you're going to say 1925 and after, so who's the best football player that ever played in the Big Ten? There's two of them.
Since 1925?
25, yep.
Oh, so I'm not counting Red Grange, because Red Grange was before 25. He was 1924, right?
No. Okay. So what year was Nagurski?
Bronco Nagurski?
Yeah, what year was he? Because he could pull a plow.
Early 30s?
That's all I know. Once you pull a plow, you're good with me.
Yeah, I think he was early 30s, wasn't he? Big Ten, the best player in Big Ten history. What do you think? George Webster? You're not going to give me Archie Griffin? Dick Butkus?
Yeah.
I
think he had the most impact.
I've never seen college film of him. I need to go in the archives and look that one up. I also
he played center and middle. I mean, the thing was he played center though. It's not like he played like I mean, he was a center. Like, he controlled both sides. That was the difference with him.
Good point. Good point. I didn't realize he played center for Illinois. I know his nephew did. Lucas played center, right? For the Illini.
All the Buckuses and Karrases you see, like, they all should be paying homage to their uncles. You know, Alex Karras is the most underrated football. Okay, you know what? There's a guy, like, most underrated football player of all time is Alex Karras.
Why?
I mean,
I think
you ask anybody.
I think he's properly rated. He's a Hall of Famer, right? He had his own sitcom.
But he wasn't alive when he gets to be a Hall of Famer, though, Jim.
He wasn't? He didn't make the Hall? Oh, because
he just got it.
Because the betting thing?
He got inducted this year.
Did it get? Oh, was it just this year? Was it delayed because of the betting scandal?
Yeah, because he had that spot downtown Detroit. Probably some of your relatives hung out at.
Bettors are going to bet.
They got to do. He's got to do what Lou's got to do.
I don't bet. I did like Alex Karras. I like the Detroit Lions. I like that they're 1-12.
You didn't like Alex Karras.
I like Alex Karras. I like him just fine. I'm glad that he was part of that Lions contingent that sacked Bart Starr 17 times on Thanksgiving Day in 1964 or whatever it was. I like being a Lions fan. I don't spend much time on it, though. It's not like I watch Lions like 3 hours every single Sunday. I'm aware of them, and I tape all the games, and I skim through them. And I was rooting for Stafford. I think Stafford was a decent guy. And I wish he'd have done. I wish him well and all that. But these Michigan State fans.
Bobby Lane.
Anyway, Bobby Lane. One time I was at Hoot Robinson's, which was a bar down the right field line outside of Tiger Stadium. And Hoot Robinson was there. He's a legendary bar owner with the old bow tie and everything, dating back decades and decades and decades. This is like late 1990s. And one of my buddies, J.E., says, "Hey, Hoot." Hoot was coming over and giving us potato chips and popcorn so we'd keep drinking more. I was probably 25 at the time. And, Hoot was around for all of them. And my buddy J.E. says, "Hoot, tell us a Bobby Lane story." And Hoot Robinson says, "I tell you what, the boys knew the longer we kept Lane in here on a Saturday night, the more we bet on him on Sunday." That's what Hoot Robinson said. And if Hoot Robinson, picture like Nicholas Colasanto, like Coach behind the bar in Cheers with Sam Malone and those dudes. You remember Coach on Cheers?
He's one of my favorites. That's
kind of what Hoot Robinson looked like. And this was Hoot Robinson's. This was his establishment going back to the 40s. And, when Tiger Stadium went, I don't know how long Hoot was around, but he was there for that one. And that's what he told us about Bobby Lane. The longer they kept him there on Saturday night, the later he was out at night, the more refreshments Bobby Lane had, the more the boys bet on him on Sunday. I don't know. That's what he said.
You gotta like that.
Absolutely. Anyway, that basketball game last night, Tyson Walker, I talked to him after practice today. They never practiced at a walkthrough today. They had film and a walkthrough. They'll practice tomorrow. Today being Thursday night in East Lansing. Getting ready for Saturday's game against Penn State. Tyson Walker, I mentioned this earlier in the show. He's been shooting the blood out of it, right? Percentage-wise, is he 9 out of 12 from three-point range? When you've got your point guard who can dish it and can drive, when he's shooting 9 out of 12, that's a problem for people. So, and he took a couple shots early in that game, that drive, that high glasser, and then the three-pointer. He said he took a few shots that he normally, wasn't taking in recent games. And he said people have been telling him to be more aggressive. And I kind of asked him, well, why did you take more shots this time? Is it, I can't paraphrase it, but basically it's because, he didn't, he wanted to get other guys involved. And he didn't say this, but I think it's good diplomacy on his part. And Michigan State's got a lot of good guys in that locker room. But he's coming into a new program. He's the new point guard. He didn't want to come out here, Nils, and just start being chucker ball, right? He didn't want to just be looking for his shot all the time. He wanted to make sure he distributed to everybody. And now he's proven himself. Not that anyone had any doubts, but now I think you're going to see him backload more of his offense into the proceedings now and shoot a little more often. He'll miss more often because he's not going to go 9 of 12. But he wanted to get other people involved and really, stake his claim as part of the team to being a team player before looking for a shot. But I think he's going to look for a shot a little bit more now, and I think it's going to make the offense overall harder to guard.
What's amazing to me is, though, like, I talked to my son Drake when we were watching the game, and he got the ball up there. I think he had a left-hand layup. He got it on the rim. I'm like, a guy that can do that, I mean, and converts, I'm like, that's a player. I mean, it's a simple, play, but, like, there are only a few guys that can do that goes in. The other guys that aren't as good, the Nils Deckos and Jim Comparonis, those balls fall out. But Walker, it just, he has touch. He's got great feel. I mean,
and I think you're going to see him. You're going to see him piloting that fast break more and more. Also,
oh, he's getting better by the day. And then you bring Hoggard in as the fullback on the second run, and Hoggard does such a great job of pushing the ball up the court. And I mean, he's a great passer as well. I can see why they like him so much. And he gets better. But like Hoggard's a great passer. I mean, like, he's nifty. He does some weird stuff.
Yeah, he is. He is a good passer. Yes, he is. And if he ever got his shot to become more consistent, he would be a problem. Yes, he is a good passer.
He hits that 15-footer. I've never seen him hit a 15-footer like he did last night. That was the first 15-footer he's ever hit.
A little step back to it also. I think there was 13 on the shot clock.
His mechanics aren't bad, though, Jim. It's just a matter of him getting confidence. It's not like he's got bad hands. I think it's just a matter of repetition. I think he's got good hands, and I think when you have with Montgomery and Stevens and OG and Wojcik and Izzo, I think in time he'll become probably a 45% plus shooter. He doesn't have bad hands. It's just a matter of concentration with him. I think he's a little bit ADD a little bit sometimes. I'm not trying to hate on people like that, but I just think he thinks a little too fast sometimes.
I didn't think he would be this improved this year. People told me he was improving, and we posted that on the message board back before the season. That's what I was hearing from coaches who were hearing that from players. And he is improved, and it's helped his team. And he is a plus backup point guard. He is better than most backup point guards.
Plus, though. There's nobody in the country that has a plus guy. Like, he's so strong.
He is strong. And he got beat off the dribble on defense a couple times, which should not happen as strong as he is.
No, you're going to have that. I don't know. I mean, those guys, when you're attacking downhill like that, sometimes you're going to have a hard time keeping your shoulders, parallel. I think it's hard, though, because as strong as he is, he's going to get a foul called on him. I think sometimes you're like, okay, I'd rather have that than him get 3 fouls in 5 minutes, and then I can't play him in the second half.
Right.
But last night, I mean, did you realize the foul count last night was like 5 minutes ago? Michigan State had like four fouls on themselves, and I think Minnesota had 2, and Minnesota had to play catch up. Like, they fouled us like 5 times within a matter of a minute and a half.
Yeah, they had fouls to give at the end, right?
I thought it was one of the better Big Ten games in terms of being officiated. And guess who was on the call?
Your buddy Borowski was on there.
No, your uncle. Yeah, your uncle Bo Borowski. And, I mean, it was weird. Like, he wasn't even involved. They must have told him, don't even show your face. I forgot he was even on the call. And that was, like, the best officiated game I've seen in the Big Ten in forever. Because usually you get those whistles that would be early and often, and everybody would be in the double bonus with 8 minutes to go in the first half. And you're like, what kind of game is this? You know what I mean?
You know what? I saw a game earlier in the year. It was Villanova against UCLA. And
that was, like you're saying, that's the best officiated game of the year.
There were no fouls. And there were no whistles. There was one time where they just played and played and played. And, I mean, they established they were going to let some contact go. And it's not like people were out there headhunting. Nothing, people were not taking advantage of it. But they were letting incidental contact go if no one was getting, like, a big advantage. And, there was a play last night when somebody, Michigan State or Minnesota, I can't remember who did it and who did what, but there was, like, contact.
You talking about the block? You talking about the block?
Somebody took a dive and they didn't give him a block or a charge. They just played on. Do you remember that?
I thought you were talking about the block where there was where Marble came from. I don't know who blocked Louis from the top. It should have been a held ball, and then Marble came from the side, and they thought there might have been a foul, but Brian Butch was trying to think that Bo Ryan was coaching, so they would get a call. I mean, in my opinion, Wisconsin's the reason the Big Ten officials stink because of all their BS. They're the reason. I mean, if you look at the rest of the teams, Wisconsin's the reason that Big Ten refs aren't good. And last night, guess what? They weren't involved. Because, I mean, remember all the flops and all the BS?
Yeah, that was – yeah. And they would you go for a jump shot, they would get under you and you'd land on their feet.
Underneath you.
They did a lot of dirty, just kind of spaz things. You ever play basketball and you just hate playing with the spaz guy? They coached spaz ball. I mean, they were very good at a lot of other things.
That was a Wisconsin thing from the state. That was a Bo Ryan thing because that wasn't a Dick Bennett thing. They don't play like that.
Right.
That was just a Bo Ryan. That's how we're going to play D3 at Wisconsin Stevens Point, whatever school he coached at, and running up the flagpole. And now his son's at Green Bay doing the same thing.
Mm-hmm. All right. What about football? What do you think about this Kenneth Walker controversy? Not being a Heisman finalist.
Well, we knew it was going to happen. I mean, it's a bad situation. He didn't play against Ohio State. Michigan State got beat 56-7, and everyone forgot about the game against Michigan. We ran for 197 yards and 5 touchdowns. He was the best player, and Gus Johnson was saying hello. It's just the timing of the deal. I mean, Michigan State for the first 8 games of the year was a top 4 team,
and that the Michigan State game was at the time one of the top 3 games of the year, right? In terms of importance. Now, I'm not saying it was going to stay that way because Michigan State wasn't good enough to keep going. But what, Clemson, Georgia?
They were good enough, but I disagree with that. They weren't healthy.
I don't think they were quite good enough
to.
But I don't think they were good enough to hang with Ohio State either way. But Clemson, Georgia was supposed to be, but then Clemson became what they were. But basically, at the time of the game, Michigan versus Michigan State, undefeateds and all that, was the game of the year at that point in college football. And he was the dominant player. He was the dominant player in the game of the year.
Okay, I think we forget. Here's one thing we're forgetting, right? Michigan State played basically without a tight end all year, right?
In terms of blocking?
Or just without a threat, right? Like Tyler Hunt, I mean, he's but Jalen Naylor and Reed and Mosley, they were the second best receiving core in the Big Ten behind the trio Olave, Wilson, and Nagaba Smith, right? Mm-hmm. So you take Naylor away from that. You put Niner. I mean, Naylor is legit fast. I don't know if he's 4.3, high 4.3s, low 4.4s, but I mean, I think we forget that the threat. I mean, Michigan State beat Michigan without Naylor playing in the second half. I mean, Naylor is legit. He was the leading receiver on the team until that game.
Mm-hmm. Oh, it hurt.
So, it killed it because taking a guy off the top. I mean, Naylor can stretch the defense.
And the reason it hurts Michigan State fans so much is because they rooted for Walker, of course, and then you've got the Michigan Hutchinson thing. That hurts it, too. But it would have meant a lot to the program to have a guy there. It means something to have someone there, and it would have been nice for Michigan State to have a guy.
I wouldn't doubt Mel Tucker to have somebody there in the next 36 months because that dude, he's going to find dudes. I watched that video tonight. I've never been more impressed with just how he talks to people. I mean, Tucker's a presidential. I was talking to somebody else tonight. Tucker's presidential. He just has a way about him. You could just see these dudes like me and you, old white people, old white men. We don't understand it. I mean, I'm just saying. I don't know. I just think Tucker's got something that a lot of us have never seen. He's got like an Eddie Robinson characteristic, that's never been. I mean, I just think
there's a lot of facets. There's a lot of facets to him. He's old school and he's new school, and he's old.
He's from Ohio.
He's Cleveland. There's a lot of Cleveland in there. There's a lot of Cleveland in there. There's a lot of Tressel. There's a lot of Saban. There's some D'Antonio. There's some new age. There's some. He's got a strong sneaker game. He's just.
But does he ever wear the same outfit though? I swear to God, I've never seen him wear the same outfit. How much stuff does Nike send this dude?
He's like the sheriff of college football. Green
over. He looks. I've never seen a coach look so fresh.
He looks fresh, man.
I mean, but he always looks clean. He's got, like you're saying, the sneaker game. Like, we're the same age. I think I'm like 4 months older than him. I'm like, man, I wish I'd be that cool. Like, gosh, darn.
He's got a wallet, and I'm not talking about his bank account.
He's got that Brandon Dawson wallet.
And we don't use profanity here, but it's from Pulp Fiction. You know the wallet that Samuel L. Jackson had? The wallet that said bad?
DMF.
He's got a wallet that says that. He should. That's code for us when I say he's got a wallet. Some guys have a wallet. And
DMF's got that wallet.
Yeah. So what's this video you're talking about tonight? I don't know what you're talking about.
What video?
You said you were so impressed with some video of Mel Tucker's tonight.
There's a video about
I've not seen it.
Announcing that Kenneth Walker is the Doak Walker Award winner, and then also the Water Camp Football National Player of the Year. And if you just watch the whole thing, it's him. It's CMT, also known as Bad MS, and Walker up front. And just the whole thing. It's impressive. It's on the Michigan State football Twitter account. It's very impressive because Tucker he takes everything in like nothing. Here's what I did, right? So I thought I was buying the book It Takes What It Takes by Trevor Moawad, who's the net neutrality guy who played football with Tucker at Wisconsin, right? He just passed away. And big Russell Wilson guy, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's insights and recommendations, but there's a line here. I'm going to read it to you right now. The most dangerous bias we face is our innate privileging of the past. I wonder who that talks about, over 60 miles to the east of us. We elevate the past and give it too much importance. Our lives are divided into three distinct states: what has happened, what is happening, and what will happen. Mel Tucker lives that, dude. I've been reading this thing. I bought it because of Tucker. And if you look on Tucker's his game plan or whatever, it says it takes what it takes.
Mm-hmm. And
that was Trevor Moawad, a guy who passed away this past year, who's kind of, I don't know, one of Tucker's guys, right? He played with him back in the day. But I'm trying to sort of live it like the next 60 days. So I get so wound up. And I try to tell my sales staff, I'm like, it takes what it takes. If it's good, it's good. If it's bad, it's bad. Whatever it may be. I mean, I try to tell my children that. But I'd get too high or too low. And I'm just sort of saying, like, this makes a lot of sense, right? Like, you're going to have good stuff. You're going to have bad stuff. But just deal with it as it comes about. It's like the whole horse thing, right? Left tackle quits after the Michigan game. A lot of coaches would have mailed it in. We're 8-4. Tucker goes 50. He goes 50-50 because he really truly believes this stuff. I just think he's a different dude. I mean, I've never been amazed. I've just never been so impressed with the coach. Like, how he just talks. People don't give him enough credit. I think the dude, he's going to be one. He kind of reminds me a little bit of Tony Dungy. Tony Dungy I always thought was so thoughtful. I think Tucker has a lot of his attributes.
He's different. There was never a Tony Dungy before Tony Dungy, and Tucker's the first Mel Tucker. And there's going to be some chapters written, and it's going to be interesting. He's a dangerous man. I don't know where it's headed, but you're right. He's got an impact on people, and they've got some recruits in this weekend. I think they're going to get Armani Winfield, the 4-star receiver from Texas. If they can close with Goodwin, and if they can flip the running back Alston from Auburn, I mean, they've got him on campus. I don't know what's going to happen there. We are learning as we go with Mel Tucker. We don't know. We don't know what's going to happen. I mean,
dude. He's like Alec Baldwin and
we'll see.
Glenn Ross.
I think at some point he can. At some point he will be. I just don't know if this early in his tenure, if he can.
When is he not close? When is he not close?
I'm just saying, bringing in like an Auburn running back commitment from Georgia, and you bring him in the middle of December to the state of Michigan to get that flip. That's going to be difficult.
Well, I mean, if you want to play in Green Bay or you want to play in Chicago, I mean, hey, buddy. I mean, or New England with Mac Jones. That's how you get to the NFL. That's how you get to the Super Bowl. I think the whole thought process might have changed, right? So I think we talked about this. Probably me and you talked about this about 4 weeks ago, right? Who are the only two teams or the 3 teams or 4 teams, right? All the teams that have won a Super Bowl north of the Mason-Dixon line are who? Okay, you had the Green Bay Packers, you had the Chicago Bears, you had the New York Giants, you had the New England Patriots, and you had the Philadelphia Eagles, and then you also had the Steelers, right? What do they all do? They all play outdoors. You have to be able to know how to play outdoors. So why would you
just ask Ryan? Just ask Ryan Day. Oops.
100%.
He had built his team. He built his team. He built his team to run with LSU and Alabama and Georgia, but he forgot to learn to win a game in an ice box in the phone booth in November.
Did you watch that Bills-Patriots game on Monday night? How many passes did the Patriots have? 3?
I heard 3.
They won an NFL game with 3 passes in 2021.
Now, what was the weather a factor in that? Why did they do it that way?
Oh, they had
I didn't see it.
The weather was coming from, it was a blue north. I mean, it was just coming off Lake Ontario and
windy. Was it windy?
it was windy as heck.
Lake Erie in Buffalo. So it was wind that forced them to not throw the ball. I didn't see it.
Oh yeah, you couldn't throw it.
I didn't see
It was like you were trying to go one way. You were trying to go the other opposite when you're going away from, the wind. You were fine. The other way, you were just trying to get out of there without turning it over.
That's I point out. I frequently mentioned that back in 1995 when Michigan State beat Michigan with Tony Banks and Ijah Carter and that bunch, and Tony Banks, a future NFL quarterback, played like people didn't know that he could, threw for about 300 yards that day or whatever, and boom, he's a national quarterback, a good one. But the very next week at Indiana, I think he attempted 9 passes because there was a 30 mile an hour crosswind. Big Ten, you got to be able to do that. And like Tucker says, he knows it. And he says, we're an all-weather team. We're built to do this. And a lot of that's a mentality, a psychology. He tells his players from the beginning, we are built to play in the fourth quarter. We are built to play in bad weather. We are built to come back and win this game. And we are built to recruit nationally. We talked about that earlier in the show. A lot of that is philosophy, and they set out to do it. And a lot of it's a mentality to will it into existence and to get your guys to believe. And there was a lot of belief on this team. There was a lot of camaraderie too, which helps. Which is easy to have camaraderie when you're winning. But it was an amazing season what he got done and the things that these players did
in a short time, for sure. I mean, putting that whole roster together, and
Speaking of which, what do you think? What do you think about linebacker Aaron Brule coming in from Mississippi State? And Winman coming in from UNLV, the two linebackers. What were your initial thoughts on this, Nils Deco?
I mean, all I know is that I'm a frequent member of the Orange Bloods board. My boy Jeff Ketchum, who's been part of the Rivals Network like you have forever, and I've never seen Texas fans say "screw Michigan State" on a message board. So I think that means that Michigan State's having some impact. So there's two dudes that Texas was interested in, Winman early on, and then this Brule kid, and all of a sudden it's like, screw Michigan State. And Ketchum's Jeff Ketchum's, his website's probably one of the bigger ones, the Rivals Network. He's like, Michigan State does the portal better than anyone. They're on a different level.
I think Jeff's right.
And so can we talk about, so there's a kid by the name of Nathan Applebaum, who I've talked to a couple times. I don't know, he probably doesn't want me to mention his name, but I've called him about my nephew, Winston Berglund, who was junior All-State in Indiana at Carmel. And I talked to him about a kid tonight. Ray Jackson called me. We talked about his nephew, Tyler Guyton, who was an offensive lineman at TCU, right? He's in the portal. He's like, hey, Nils, can you call your Michigan State guy? So I called Nathan Applebaum. Nathan Applebaum is a stud. He picks up the phone first ring every time. And so I asked him, I'm not going to quote him on anything, but this dude picks the phone up every time. The kid doesn't feel very good, it sounds like, but I'm just telling you, the attention to detail on the lowest level for Tucker's staff, they're on it. I mean, I'm just telling you, it's a different level. You pick up the phone and it's 1:30, 2:30, 3:30 in the morning. I'm telling you, it's a different deal with Tucker. These guys he has working in the portal, they are on it. And these are guys that are 22, 23, just graduated from college. They're trying to make a name for themselves to be in the Saban network or the Belichick network or the Tucker network once that evolves. But these dudes are on it. I'm telling you, they respond to emails, texts, and, you know what I mean? I've been doing this forever, right? I started doing this when I tried to get Dan Enos to recruit Nick Foles. True story. I'm up there.
True story, people.
So this is the Illinois game. Now,
Nils is headquartered in Texas, and he did a lot with youth athletics and grassroots basketball down there. So he crossed paths with a lot of athletes that were looking for opportunities, and Nils made some phone calls for a few of them sometimes. Go ahead.
So Enos, I asked him to recruit Nick Foles. He brushed me off. I'm sorry. I'm just going to be honest. But Dan Rochar, I happened upon him, right? So my brother-in-law, Brent Berglund, and my best friend, Chad Cotton, who brought me down to Texas from Indiana, had played for Rochar at Butler, okay, home of the Butler Bulldogs. Okay, so
played football,
said, hey, yeah. And so, my brother-in-law had, he got recruited, he got coached by Rochar, and they were back and forth. But I told Rochar who I was, introduced myself, and, couldn't be more nice. Well, Nick Foles, the AU coach, probably 3 weeks later, said, hey, Nils, Nick's going to decommit from Arizona State. Dennis Erickson's going to take Brock Osweiler instead. Do you know anybody at Michigan State? Well, I called Roshar. Roshar called me right back. It was on a Saturday morning at 7:00. And, the whole thing went down. The next week, Foles would come up there for an unofficial visit. And, the whole thing evolves that way. Foles comes to Michigan State. But this Applebaum guy and what they're doing at Michigan State right now in terms of recruiting, it's second to none. They're on it. Like, there's no dead time. I mean, that's why Tucker, he's going to get done things at East Lansing that we could never have dreamed because he's just on point every minute.
He has the potential to do it because they're operating in terms of putting a roster together. They're doing things with organization and ambition. They've always had ambition, but organization and just a broad-based movement. And they've got a lot of support staff, and he confronts and demands. He's got these guys working hard, and they've got some talented people there. They got a campus to sell. But all of that, if you do it really well and you do it at an A+ level, it might give you a chance to have as much talent on the field as Ohio State. That only gets you there, And Ohio State, I think that their strong recruiting in the last 10 years is going to be difficult to sustain. I mean, Urban Meyer did a great job getting that roster ready to play against some of those Southern teams.
No, I think Urban Meyer, right there with Saban, is probably the best recruiters of the modern day era. It's
going to be hard for Ryan Day to keep up with that if he stays there. I assume he's staying there.
You can't keep up with that.
Yeah, I don't think Ohio State's been really good, and Ryan Day's had some success, but I suspect that their roster is not quite going to be what it's been for the last 7-8 years.
How much longer is Larry Johnson going to be there? I mean, You know what I'm saying? Mm-hmm. I mean, he's been the best defensive line coach between Penn State and Ohio State in the last, 20 years?
And I tell you what, I mean, Ohio State was really good at times this year, and they were really good last year, but they just went 10-2 and lost to Michigan, and they're going to lose to Utah in the Rose Bowl.
They're not losing to Utah in the Rose Bowl.
All right. But as good as they've been, Ohio State fans can turn you into that Earl. They will turn you into that Earl Bruce Pumpkin quicker now than they used to.
You're talking about John Cooper or are you talking about Earl Bruce?
Either one of them. It's not quite LSU or Auburn in terms of, whack job people turning on you, but Ryan Day is going to have some pressure down there. Not next year, but
they're going to figure out who they're going to be, though. Are they going to be a downhill team, or are they going to spread themselves out and be good up until,
you can't make
November 5th?
I know that they hired the coordinator from Oklahoma State, and that's probably a good start, but you cannot make that mistake like he made with that defensive coordinator hire 2 years ago.
Well, I don't think that came from him. That came from the higher ups. He had no choice on that. That was a deal where Urban Meyer and Gene Smith said, "Here's the guy you're hiring."
I hope not, for his sake. You can't let George Steinbrenner hire your coaches. I'm talking figuratively.
I don't think he knew any better. You think he knew any better?
He should have.
I don't think he did, though.
Because, they got exposed. I talked about it last year at the end when Michigan State played Ohio State, and they made it to the national title game to their credit, and I was kind of surprised by that based on what was going on defense, because I didn't know Coombs was their defensive coordinator, first-time coordinator that late in his career, whoa. And you're at Ohio State, you don't have to do that. And then this year, the Chickens came home to roost against Baylor, and they were terrible on defense, and they got rid of them. But quality control, a head coach should have seen that the previous spring before he gets on the field in September. Didn't happen. And they spent all season trying to make up for it. And they played some pretty good defense here and there. But Michigan State ran the ball a couple times against Ohio State. They popped off some good runs. They just couldn't sustain it because the quarterback or the scoreboard went south on them in a hurry. And Walker was injured. But if Walker had been healthy and Michigan State hadn't had any semblance of pass defense in that game, Michigan State would have run for 200 against them.
Okay, so let's go to that. So if the Michigan State roster that played Ohio State that day in East Lansing, what's the score of that game?
If what now?
So let's just say we flip it. So Michigan State plays Ohio State on October 30th in East Lansing. What's the score of that game? with the same roster. And everyone, you know how they feel and everything.
Well, the past defense for Michigan State was still, it really was becoming a problem that day. So, I mean, Ohio State still would have scored in the 40s, and I think Michigan State would have scored in the 20s. I think.
Okay.
All right, man, we're going to sign off. We still have good
I
numbers.
appreciate you all your hard work. You're the best.
All right,
We
man.
really appreciate what you do, Jim Comparone. You're the best. I'm happy that I get to know you.
All right, man. That sounds good. I'll take it. I'll talk to you later, Nils. You be good. All right, there he goes.
Appreciate you.
All right, man. So anyway, we went open mic night a little bit tonight, talking Michigan State sports. And I was going through the comments here, and I don't think I missed anything else. I'm sure I missed a few. Steve and I leave talking about Dean Smith, four corners. I don't know what else going on here. Before we sign off, I'm gonna go to the top and look through all the posts here because I appreciate people taking time to post, and I don't want to overlook anybody. Again, I apologize for that Michigan troll that came in and polluted a little bit. A lot of people celebrating that Rutgers win. Good for Rutgers. And, you know, I like Purdue, man. I like the Purdue basketball thing. I know some of you guys don't like Purdue because Purdue fans don't like Michigan State basketball. But I just like that Purdue is, that they're just basketball people. And they're, they got their shirts tucked in. They're Purdue people. They're basketball people. They're big pant people. And they got the bench seating, Mackey Arena. They're big pant people. I like Purdue basketball. I'm glad for them that they're number one. I like it because of the loyalty of the fans. And to quote a book that I've got over there, it's called Where the Game Matters the Most, I think. It's about Indiana basketball, so I appreciate that. And they've been pretty clean over the years. Really clean, I think. What do we have here? Steven I Leaf says, I love this hoop team. I can understand that. It looks like an Izzo team, doesn't it? They're good kids. They're having fun. They're all wagging their tails. And they're getting better. And they're going to get better from here. I think the transition game is going to improve. Sea-Dog says, Kenneth Walker getting 140 yards against Penn State is pretty darn good. It is. Penn State had a good defense all year. That was a good game by Kenneth Walker. And he wasn't completely healthy at that point. And they needed every one of those yards. That was a very good performance by him. He should be in New York. I'll go as far as to say it's a travesty. It'd be a good thing for a good kid who had a very good season, a great season, a cornerstone season for a surprise team, a top 10 team that went 10-2 and was still in the national championship conversation until week 11. And he was the player for a team that was still in the national championship conversation until week 11. So, but you have a lot of flavor of the day voters. And it's great that the Heisman Trophy is such a big thing, It's got a lot of history to it, as it should. It's a nice trophy. Great tradition. Great romanticism. Great nostalgia. It's great that people talk about it. It's the only trophy I know of that in preseason discussion, people talk about who the favorites are. I mean, right now it's December. In February, before spring training, are people going to be talking about, okay, who are the leading candidates for the Cy Young? No. But the Heisman Trophy, they do. It's a great trophy. Too bad there's so many impressionable fools that bet on it, or vote on it, and bet on it. Anyway, I'm not saying he should have won. I'm just saying that the disparity in voting should not have been such that there should have been a break between 4 and 5 that didn't allow him to go. A lot of stupid people have Heisman votes. Impressionable flavor of the day types. Spartan MD says, is Brule from Mississippi State as good as Montez Sweat? I think you posted that over there on the bunker, and I didn't get to that question. different types of player. I think you're trying to be funny because Montez Sweat left Michigan State to go to Mississippi State. Montez Sweat was a big, tall defensive end. Brule is a linebacker. No, he's not as talented as Montez Sweat. Gordon Sonoda says, I didn't know the Camp Award is the National Player of the Year. It is the National Player of the Year. And it probably should be the bigger award because Walter Camp did more for college football than Heisman did. So I guess it's all about branding and promotions as to why the Heisman Trophy became known as the more famous of the Player of the Year awards. All right, got some more conversations. Let's see. I think we might just have to wrap it up because I'm having trouble finding comments. Yeah, we're going to wrap it up. I appreciate all the people that participated and contributed and supported another edition of SpartanMag Live here from snowy East Lansing, Michigan. It's great to be a part of it. It's great to be your humble correspondent in East Lansing, Michigan, reporting on your Michigan State Spartans every day at SpartanMag.com, where we focus on football, basketball, recruiting, and other topics. And those topics are discussed ad nauseum at the Underground Bunker message board, the church of what's happening now. The daily narrative of Michigan State sports is the Underground Bunker message board at SpartanMag.com. If you're not familiar with it, go check it out. You'll love it. SpartanMag.com. Become a subscriber. Give us a thumbs up. Subscribe to this channel. We appreciate you. We will see you next time. Signing day coming up on Wednesday for your complete coverage. SpartanMag.com. Place to go. Appreciate it. Take care, everybody.